What would you risk to save someone you've never met? For Adrian Hale, a single father working the night shift in a Chicago high-rise, the answer came at 11:47 p.m. when he discovered something that would change everything. A data breach, a CEO's career hanging by a thread, and a choice that would force him to stay when he'd promised his 8-year-old daughter he'd be home. Before we dive into this story, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to that fateful night. The fluorescent lights of the 42nd floor hummed their familiar electric song, a sound Adrian Hale had grown so accustomed to that he barely noticed it anymore. Outside the reinforced glass windows of the server room, Chicago sprawled beneath him like a circuit board come to life. Thousands of lights blinking in the darkness, each one a story, a life, a moment happening without him. Adrian rubbed his eyes and checked his watch. 11:34 p.m. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with a text message. He already knew who it was. "Daddy, are you coming home soon? I can't sleep." His daughter, Maya, 8 years old, dark curls like her mother's, and a habit of staying awake far past her bedtime whenever he worked the night shift. His chest tightened with the familiar ache of guilt, the constant companion of every single parent who'd ever had to choose between a paycheck and a bedtime story. "Soon, sweetheart. Promise. Close your eyes, and I'll be there before you know it." He set the phone down on the desk beside 3 empty coffee cups and turned back to the monitor. Just another hour of routine security audits, then he could clock out, drive home to the small apartment in Logan Square, and tuck Maya into bed with the stuffed elephant she'd had since she was 2. Just another hour. That's what he thought anyway. The data traffic monitor displayed its usual patterns. The digital heartbeat of Meridian Solutions, one of Chicago's fastest-growing tech companies. Adrian had been contracting here for 6 months, long enough to know the rhythm of the network like a musician knows a familiar song. Peaks and valleys of data flow, predictable as the tide. But at 11:47 p.m., something changed. It was subtle. So subtle that 99% of cybersecurity professionals would have missed it entirely. A microsecond delay in the response time from the executive server. A tiny hiccup in the data stream, like a single skipped heartbeat in an otherwise healthy pulse. Adrian's fingers froze over the keyboard. He'd been doing this work for 12 years, since before Maya was born, back when his wife Sarah was still alive, and their biggest worry was whether they could afford a 2-bedroom apartment. He'd learned to trust his instincts, and right now every instinct he had was screaming that something was wrong. He pulled up the network traffic analysis, his tired eyes suddenly sharp and focused. Coffee forgotten, daughter temporarily pushed to the back of his mind, he began to trace the anomaly. The delay appeared again. Then again. A pattern emerging from the noise. "No," he whispered to the empty server room. "No, no, no!" Someone was inside the network. Not some external hacker launching a brute force attack from halfway around the world. This was surgical, precise, the kind of breach that could only come from someone who knew exactly what they were looking for and exactly where to find it. Adrian's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up logs, tracing routes, following the digital breadcrumbs that the intruder had tried so carefully to hide. His heart rate picked up. The familiar weight of responsibility settled over his shoulders, heavier now than it had been in years, because he knew what was at stake. The target crystallized on his screen. Executive Terminal 1A, Eleanor Blake's computer, the CEO. Adrian sat back in his chair, mind racing. Eleanor Blake was more than just the head of Meridian Solutions. She was a force of nature in Chicago's tech scene, a woman who'd built the company from a 3-person startup in a garage to a multi-million-dollar enterprise in less than a decade. Forbes had featured her twice. TechCrunch called her the most innovative mind in enterprise software. Her board meeting tomorrow morning would determine the future direction of the company, and rumor had it she was planning a major restructuring that would shake the entire organization. And someone was stealing her files. Right now. While he sat here, 42 floors below her office, watching it happen in real time. Adrian checked his watch again. 11:52 p.m. He thought of Maya, waiting for him. Mrs. Chen, their neighbor who watched her when he worked nights, would be exhausted. Maya would be fighting sleep the way she always did when he wasn't home, stubborn and worried in equal measure. He could call building security. Hand it off. Let someone else deal with it. Clock out, go home. be the father Maya needed him to be. But even as the thought crossed his mind, he was already standing up, already grabbing his security badge, already making the choice that he knew would keep him here for hours longer than he'd planned. Because that's who Adrian Hale was. That's who he'd always been, even when it cost him, even when it hurt. The right thing, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. He pulled out his phone and sent another text to Mrs. Chen. "Emergency at work, going to be late. So sorry, we'll pay you double." Then to Maya. "Something came up, baby girl. Daddy has to help someone. I'll be home as soon as I can. I love you more than all the stars." He didn't wait for responses, couldn't bear to read them right now. Instead, he locked his workstation, pocketed his access card, and headed for the elevator. The executive floor was 60 stories up. The building was nearly empty at this hour. As the elevator climbed, Adrian watched the floor numbers tick upward, his reflection staring back at him from the polished steel doors. He looked tired, older than his 34 years. The gray shirt he wore was wrinkled from a long day, his jeans worn at the knees. He hadn't shaved in 2 days. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Not exactly the image of a man about to walk into the CEO's office unannounced at midnight. But appearances had never mattered much to Adrian. Results did. Truth did. Doing the job right, even when no one was watching. The elevator dinged softly as it reached the 60th floor. The executive level was a different world from the server room where Adrian spent his nights. Here, everything was glass and chrome, elegant and expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Chicago's glittering skyline. The carpet was thick enough to muffle footsteps. Abstract art adorned the walls, pieces that probably cost more than Adrian made in a year. The lights were dimmed for the night shift, but he could see a glow coming from the corner office at the end of the hall. Eleanor Blake's office. She was still here. Adrian's pulse quickened as he walked down the corridor, his reflection multiplying in the glass walls around him. He'd seen Eleanor Blake exactly twice in his 6 months at Meridian, once in the lobby, surrounded by a phalanx of assistants and executives, moving through the building like a queen through her court. Once in a company-wide video meeting where she'd announced a new product line with the kind of commanding presence that made everyone in the room sit up straighter. He'd never spoken to her directly, had never expected to. Until now. He reached her office door and paused, suddenly aware of how insane this was. A contractor from the IT department showing up at the CEO's office at midnight, claiming her computer was compromised. She'd probably think he was crazy. Or worse, that he was the threat. But the data didn't lie. The breach was real. And every second he hesitated was another second that sensitive files were being copied, stolen, weaponized. Adrian knocked on the door frame. Through the glass wall, he could see Eleanor Blake look up from her desk, surprise flickering across her face. Even at this hour, she looked polished, dark hair pulled back, white blouse still crisp, eyes sharp and intelligent behind frameless glasses. She gestured for him to enter. "Can I help you?" Her voice was cool, professional, with an edge that suggested she wasn't accustomed to being interrupted. Adrian stepped into the office, very aware that he was tracking reality into this carefully curated space of power and influence. "Miss Blake, I'm Adrian Hale from IT Security. I need you to step away from your computer immediately." Her eyebrows rose. "Excuse me?" "Your system is compromised. Right now, as we speak, someone is accessing your files remotely. I've traced an active breach targeting your terminal specifically." Eleanor studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. She didn't move away from the desk. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled in front of her. "And you are?" she asked, though he'd already introduced himself. "Adrian Hale, cybersecurity contractor. I've been monitoring your network for 6 months. At midnight. The breach started at 11:47 p.m. Convenient timing." Adrian understood what she was doing, testing him, looking for holes in his story, protecting herself from what might be a con or a trap. Smart, cautious. Exactly what a CEO should be. "Ms. Blake, I know how this looks, but I promise you, I'm not the threat here. The threat is whoever's inside your system right now, copying files that I'm guessing you can't afford to have leaked before tomorrow morning's board meeting." Something shifted in her expression. Not quite trust, but recognition. She glanced at her computer screen, then back at him. "How did you find it?" Traffic analysis. There was a delay in your server response time. Microseconds. Most people wouldn't catch it. But you did. It's what I do. Eleanor Blake stood, finally, moving away from the desk with a grace that spoke of years navigating boardrooms and power dynamics. She was taller than he'd expected, maybe 5'10", with the kind of presence that made the room feel smaller. You said you need to stop it immediately, she said. What does that entail? I need access to your terminal. I need to trace the intrusion back to its source and shut it down without triggering any automatic data wipes or alerting whoever's on the other end that we're onto them. How long will that take? Adrian hesitated. This was the moment of truth, the moment where he'd have to tell her and himself that going home to Maya was off the table for the foreseeable future. I don't know, he admitted. Could be an hour, could be longer. Depends on how sophisticated the attack is. Eleanor studied him again, and Adrian had the distinct impression he was being evaluated on multiple levels simultaneously. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, because she nodded once, decisively. All right, Mr. Hale, show me what you've got. She moved to the side, giving him access to her desk. As Adrian settled into her chair, expensive leather, ergonomically perfect, he caught a faint scent of her perfume, something subtle and professional. His fingers found this keyboard, and immediately he felt more at home, even in this alien environment of executive privilege. The screen showed exactly what he'd feared. An active remote session hidden beneath the surface of the normal operating system. Beautiful, sophisticated, and deeply illegal. They're good, he muttered, pulling up terminal windows and beginning the forensic analysis. Whoever did this knows their way around your security protocols. Inside job? Eleanor asked, standing behind him now, watching over his shoulder. Has to be. This level of access requires credentials that only a handful of people in the company would have. He heard her sharp intake of breath. Who? Give me a few minutes and I'll tell you. Adrian's world narrowed to the screen in front of him. Lines of code scrolled past, revealing the architecture of the intrusion. He traced connection logs, analyzed packet data, followed the digital trail with the kind of focused intensity that had made him one of the best in his field. Behind him, Eleanor Blake remained silent, but he could feel her presence, the weight of her attention, the tension radiating from her as she watched her company's security unravel in real time. There, Adrian said, pointing to a string of code. That's your entry point. Someone logged in using executive-level credentials at 11:42 p.m., 5 minutes before the breach initiated. Whose credentials? Adrian dug deeper, pulling up the authentication logs. When he saw the name, he went very still. Victor Lang. The silence behind him was deafening. You're certain? Eleanor's voice was carefully controlled, but Adrian could hear the fury beneath it. The logs don't lie. Victor Lang used his credentials to access your system, established a remote connection, and has been systematically copying files from your restructuring folder for the past 20 minutes. Victor, Eleanor repeated, and now the anger was clear, sharp as broken glass. My CFO, the man I've worked with for 8 years, the man who sits on my senior leadership team. Adrian turned in the chair to look at her. Eleanor Blake's face was a mask of controlled rage, her jaw tight, her eyes blazing with betrayal and calculation in equal measure. He's preparing for the board meeting tomorrow, she said, more to herself than to Adrian. He wants to undermine my restructuring plan. If he has those files, he can position himself as the alternative leadership option. He can make me look incompetent, reckless, unprepared. That would be my guess, Adrian said carefully. Eleanor paced to the window, staring out at the Chicago skyline. How much has he taken? Adrian checked the transfer logs. About 40% of the restructuring documents. Strategic plans, financial projections, personnel decisions. Enough to do serious damage if presented the right way. Can you stop it? Yes, but... She turned to face him. But what? If I shut down the connection now, he'll know we're onto him. He'll still have what he's already copied, and he'll have time to prepare a defense, cover his tracks. We'll know he did it, but we might not be able to prove it definitively. What's the alternative? Adrian took a breath. This was where things got complicated, where his simple security audit turned into something else entirely. I shut down your entire system, rebuild the encryption from scratch, Make the files he's already stolen completely useless, corrupted beyond recovery. Then I trace back through the network and gather enough evidence to prove not just that he did it, but exactly how he did it. Make it airtight, undeniable. Eleanor walked back to the desk, leaning against it, arms crossed. How long would that take? Hours, Adrian admitted. Maybe all night. I'd have to rewrite the security architecture for your entire executive network. Make sure there are no other vulnerabilities. Document everything for legal purposes. And you're willing to do that? Tonight? Adrian thought of Maya, asleep by now, he hoped. Thought of the promise he'd made to be home early. Thought of all the promises he'd broken over the years, all the times work had pulled him away when he'd sworn it wouldn't. But he also thought of what would happen if he walked away now. Eleanor Blake would face that board meeting tomorrow with a traitor sitting at the table, armed with stolen information. Her career, her company, everything she'd built, it would all be vulnerable because Adrian Hale chose to go home and read his daughter a bedtime story. I'm willing, he said quietly. Eleanor studied him for a long moment, and something in her expression softened almost imperceptibly. You said you're a contractor. You don't even work directly for Meridian. No, ma'am. So why? Why stay? Why take this on when you could just report it to security and go home? Adrian met her eyes. Because it's the right thing to do. And because he paused, surprised by the honesty that wanted to come out. Because I know what it's like to build something important and have it threatened by people who should be on your side. She nodded slowly, understanding something in those words that he hadn't quite said out loud. All right, Mr. Hale. Do what you need to do. I'll be here. You don't have to stay, Adrian said. This is going to be technical work. Boring, mostly. A slight smile crossed Eleanor's face, the first genuine expression he'd seen from her. Mr. Hale, it's my company, my files, my board meeting in... She checked her watch. 8 hours. I'm not going anywhere. She walked to the small conference table in the corner of her office and opened her laptop. I'll work on my presentation while you work on saving it. We'll keep each other company. And just like that, Adrian found himself settling in for a long night with the CEO of Meridian Solutions. The first hour passed in concentrated silence. Adrian worked methodically, first isolating Eleanor's system from the network, then beginning the delicate process of corrupting the files that Victor Lang had already stolen. It had to look natural, not like sabotage, but like a catastrophic encryption failure, the kind of thing that could plausibly happen during a late-night system glitch. He wrote code, tested it, rewrote it. His fingers flew across the keyboard with the kind of muscle memory that came from thousands of hours of practice. Behind him, he could hear Eleanor typing on her own laptop, occasionally sighing or muttering under her breath. At one point, she got up and walked to a small cabinet in the corner, returning with 2 bottles of water. She set one beside him without a word, a simple gesture that somehow felt more personal than it should have. Thank you, Adrian said, grateful. His throat was dry from concentration. You're welcome. She returned to her work, but a few minutes later she spoke again. Can I ask you something? Sure. When you first came in here tonight, you seemed, I don't know, reluctant, like you'd rather be anywhere else. Adrian kept his eyes on the screen, but he smiled slightly. That obvious? I'm good at reading people. It's part of the job. I had plans tonight, he admitted. Nothing major. Just home. Family waiting for you? The question was casual, but Adrian heard the subtext. Eleanor Blake testing again, gathering information, trying to understand the man who'd appeared in her office at midnight. Before he could answer, Eleanor smiled, a slight teasing expression that transformed her face from CEO to something more human. So tell me, Mr. Hale, is the woman you're rushing home to prettier than I am? The question hung in the air between them. Adrian stopped typing, turned to look at her. Eleanor was watching him with that same slight smile, eyebrows raised, clearly expecting him to laugh or deflect or engage in the kind of light flirtation that the question invited. He didn't. She's 8 years old, Adrian said simply, and she's waiting for her dad. The smile faded from Eleanor's face, replaced by something else. Surprise. Understanding. Maybe even respect. Oh, she said softly. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It's fine. Adrian interrupted gently. You didn't know. But yes, Maya's waiting for me. She always does when I work nights. Stays up past her bedtime, worrying. Maya, Eleanor repeated. That's a beautiful name. Her mother chose it. Adrian turned back to the computer, fingers resuming their work on the keyboard. Sarah died 4 years ago. Cancer. It's been just me and Maya since then. He heard Eleanor's sharp intake of breath. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Silence fell between them again, but it felt different now. Less like two strangers sharing space, more like two people who'd accidentally revealed something real. After a moment, Eleanor spoke again, her voice quieter. That's why you're here, isn't it? Doing this work tonight instead of going home to her. What do you mean? Because you understand what it means to build something and protect it. Because you know what it's like to be responsible for something, someone who depends on you completely. She paused. Because men like you can't walk away when someone needs help, even when it costs you. Adrian didn't respond, but his hand stilled on the keyboard. She's lucky to have you, Eleanor added. Your daughter. I'm lucky to have her, Adrian corrected. She's the only thing that makes sense anymore. He meant it. In the 4 years since Sarah's death, Maya had been his anchor, his purpose, his reason to keep going when grief threatened to drown him. Every morning she smiled at him over breakfast. Every night she fell asleep holding his hand. Every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every skinned knee and bad dream. He'd been there for all of it, determined to be enough for her, even though he knew he could never fill the hole her mother's absence had left. How do you do it? Eleanor asked. Balance everything? Work, parenting, life? Adrian laughed, but there was no humor in it. Balance? I don't. I just prioritize. Maya comes first, always. Everything else fits around her. The contracting work, the night shifts. It's all because it gives me flexibility during the day. I can take her to school, pick her up, help with homework, make dinner. The nights are hard, but Mrs. Chen helps, and Maya's tough. She understands that Daddy has to work. She's 8, Eleanor said gently. She shouldn't have to understand that. No, Adrian agreed. She shouldn't, but life isn't fair, is it? We play the hand we're dealt. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight of understanding that suggested she knew something about unfair hands too. No, she said, it isn't. The conversation lapsed back into silence, but something had shifted between them. The walls had come down just a little, just enough. Adrian worked through the code, line by line, building a new security infrastructure from the ground up. It was delicate work, requiring absolute precision. One wrong command could corrupt Eleanor's entire system. One missed vulnerability could leave a door open for Victor Lang or anyone else who wanted to exploit it. But Adrian was good at his job, better than good. He'd built his reputation on being thorough, meticulous, uncompromising in his standards. At 1:30 a.m., he hit a critical milestone. The files Victor Lang had stolen were now completely corrupted, useless garbage data that would look like a catastrophic encryption failure. Victor would have no idea what had happened until he tried to access them. We're halfway there, Adrian announced, stretching his back. Hours of hunching over the keyboard were taking their toll. Eleanor looked up from her laptop, where she'd been refining her presentation. Halfway? The stolen files are corrupted. Now I need to rebuild your security architecture and gather the evidence trail that proves Victor did this. That part's going to take another few hours at least. It's almost 2 a.m, Eleanor observed. I know. When did you last eat? Adrian had to think about it. Lunch, I think? Yesterday. Eleanor stood up decisively. That's unacceptable. Come on. Ms. Blake, I really need to... Adrian. It was the first time she'd used his first name. You've been working for 3 hours straight. You're going to make yourself sick. Take 20 minutes. Eat something. Let your eyes rest. The work will still be here. She had a point. His vision was starting to blur, and his hands were cramping from the constant typing. Plus, his stomach was growling loud enough that he was surprised Eleanor couldn't hear it across the room. All right, he conceded. 20 minutes. Eleanor led him out of her office and down the hall to the executive kitchen, another world Adrian had never seen before. Gleaming appliances, granite countertops, a refrigerator that probably cost more than his car. She opened the fridge and pulled out containers of food. "We keep the kitchen stocked for late nights. Help yourself." Adrian found some leftover pasta and heated it in the microwave while Eleanor made coffee, real coffee, from an espresso machine that looked like it belonged in an Italian cafe. They sat at the small table in the corner of the kitchen, two people from completely different worlds, brought together by circumstance and a late-night crisis. "Tell me about her," Eleanor said after a moment. "Maya." Adrian smiled despite his exhaustion. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. What's she like?" "She's..." Adrian searched for the right words. "She's sunshine. Even on the worst days, she finds something to be happy about. She loves art, drawing, painting, making these elaborate collages out of magazine cutouts. She wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up because she's convinced she can teach cats to be nice." Eleanor laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her face. "She's stubborn," Adrian continued. "Gets that from her mother. Once she decides she's going to do something, there's no talking her out of it. Last year she decided to learn Spanish, so she checked out every Spanish children's book from the library and taught herself. She's already better at it than I am." "She sounds amazing." "She is. She's the best thing I've ever done." Adrian took a sip of the coffee Eleanor had made. Perfect. Exactly the right strength. "What about you? Any kids?" Eleanor shook her head. "Never found the time. Or the right partner. I've been so focused on building Meridian that everything else just fell by the wayside. There were relationships, but they never lasted. Turns out most men don't particularly enjoy dating someone who works 80-hour weeks and considers the company her first priority." "That must be lonely," Adrian said quietly. "Sometimes," Eleanor admitted, "but I told myself it was worth it, that I was building something important, that I could have the personal life later, after the company was stable." She laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Except there's always another crisis, another challenge, another reason to postpone later. And now one of your senior executives is trying to destroy everything you've built." "Yes." Eleanor's expression hardened. "Victor. I trusted him, brought him in when Meridian was still a startup, gave him opportunities, promoted him, included him in every major decision, and this is how he repays that trust." "People disappoint you," Adrian said. "It's one of the few constants in life." "You sound like you're speaking from experience." Adrian thought about his own brother, who disappeared when Sarah got sick, too uncomfortable with illness and death to stick around. Thought about the friends who'd promised to help after the funeral, and then slowly drifted away when the reality of supporting a grieving single father became too inconvenient. "Everyone's speaking from experience by the time they reach our age," he said instead. Eleanor raised her coffee cup in a mock toast to disappointing people and the wisdom they unwillingly bestow. Adrian clinked his cup against hers, smiling despite the heaviness of the conversation. They finished eating and returned to Eleanor's office, where Adrian dove back into the code with renewed energy. The coffee and food had helped, but more than that, the brief human connection had reminded him why he was doing this. Not just for the paycheck or the contract, not even just to do the right thing, but because Eleanor Blake deserved to have someone in her corner who wouldn't betray her. Because loyalty should mean something. Because sometimes the universe gave you a chance to be the person you wished others had been for you. By 3 a.m., Adrian had completed the security rebuild. Eleanor's system was now protected by encryption so sophisticated that it would take a team of experts months to crack it. Now came the final piece, documenting the evidence. Adrian meticulously traced every step of Victor Lang's intrusion. He captured logs, timestamps, authentication records, data transfers. He built an airtight digital paper trail that showed exactly when Victor had logged in, what files he'd accessed, and how he'd attempted to cover his tracks. Eleanor watched over his shoulder as Adrian compiled everything into a comprehensive report. "This is incredible," she murmured, reading through the evidence. "This is undeniable," Adrian finished. "Victor can't explain this away, can't claim it was a mistake or a misunderstanding. The logs showed deliberate, systematic theft of proprietary information using his own credentials." "What about the corrupted files?" "That's the beautiful part," Adrian said, allowing himself a moment of professional pride. "When Victor tries to access the files he stole, they'll appear to have been damaged by an encryption error, a random system glitch that happened to occur during his illegal transfer. He'll have no idea we know what he did. No time to prepare a defense or create an alternative explanation. Eleanor smiled, sharp, fierce, triumphant. He's going to walk into that board meeting thinking he has the advantage, and instead he's going to find out he has nothing. Except a criminal investigation. That too, Adrian agreed. Eleanor moved to her desk, picked up her phone, and made a call despite the late hour. "James?" she said when someone answered. "I need you in the office first thing tomorrow morning, before the board meeting. Bring counsel with you. We have a situation that requires immediate legal intervention." She paused, listening. "No, it can't wait. I'll explain everything when you get here. 6 a.m. Another pause. "Thank you." She hung up and turned back to Adrian. "My head of HR. He's going to love being woken up at 3 in the morning. Part of the job? Part of my job is making hard calls at inconvenient times." Eleanor sat down in one of the chairs facing her desk, suddenly looking as exhausted as Adrian felt. "You know what the worst part is?" "What?" "I genuinely liked Victor. Considered him a friend, not just a colleague. We've had dinner together, celebrated wins, commiserated over setbacks, and the whole time he was just waiting for an opportunity to take me down." "People wear masks," Adrian said, "sometimes for years. Doesn't mean the friendship wasn't real. Just means that when push came to shove, he chose himself over loyalty." "Have you always been this philosophical at 3 in the morning? Insomnia is good for contemplating the nature of human behavior." Eleanor laughed, genuinely amused. "I imagine it is." Adrian saved the final report and leaned back in the chair, his work finally complete. "It's done. Your system is secure, the evidence is documented, and Victor Lang's stolen files are worthless. You're ready for your board meeting. Thanks to you. Just doing my job." "This was considerably more than your job," Eleanor countered. "You could have reported the breach and gone home hours ago. Instead, you stayed all night, rebuilt my entire security infrastructure, and handed me enough evidence to bring criminal charges against my CFO. That's not just doing your job, Adrian. That's extraordinary." Adrian felt his face warm with embarrassment. Compliments always made him uncomfortable. "Anyone with my skill set would have done the same." "No," Eleanor said firmly. "They wouldn't have. Trust me on that. I've dealt with enough contractors and consultants to know the difference between someone who does the minimum required and someone who actually cares about the outcome." She stood and walked to the window, watching as the first hints of dawn began to lighten the sky over Chicago. "In 6 hours, I'm going to walk into that boardroom and fight for my company's future," she said quietly. "And I'm going to win because you gave me the ammunition I needed. I won't forget that." Adrian joined her at the window, both of them watching the city wake up. "What will you do about Victor?" "Terminate him immediately. File criminal charges for corporate espionage. Make it clear that betrayal has consequences." Her voice was hard, but Adrian could hear the hurt underneath. "And then I'll have to figure out how to trust my senior leadership team again." "That's the hardest part," Adrian said. "Rebuilding trust after it's been broken." "You sound like you know something about that too." "My wife's death taught me a lot of things. One of them was that you can't protect yourself from being hurt. You can only decide whether the risk of trusting people is worth the potential reward." "And is it?" Adrian thought about Maya, asleep at home, trusting him completely to always come back, always be there, always keep her safe. Thought about Mrs. Chen, who'd stepped up to help him when he needed it most. Thought about the few friends who'd stuck around, imperfect but present. "Yeah," he said, "it is. Not everyone will deserve that trust, but the ones who do make all the difference." Eleanor nodded, absorbing this. "I should let you go home. Your daughter will be waking up soon." Adrian checked his phone. 4:17 a.m. Maya's alarm went off at 6:30. If he left now, he could get home, shower, change, and be there when she opened her eyes. "I should," he agreed, but somehow he didn't move toward the door. Eleanor turned to face him fully. In the growing light of dawn, she looked different, younger, more vulnerable, less like a CEO and more like a person who'd just survived a crisis. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything, for noticing what others would have missed, for staying when you didn't have to, for caring about something that wasn't your responsibility." "You're welcome." They stood there for a moment, Two people who'd been strangers hours ago, connected now by the strange intimacy of a shared crisis in the middle of the night. "Well," Adrian finally said, "I should—" "Wait." Eleanor moved to her desk, pulled out a business card, and wrote something on the back. "My personal number. If you ever need anything, a reference, a recommendation, just someone to talk to, call me. I mean that." Adrian took the card, surprised by the gesture. "Thank you." "And Adrian?" "Yeah?" "Give Maya a hug from me. Tell her she has an extraordinary father." Something in Adrian's chest tightened. "I will." He walked to the elevator, exhausted but satisfied. The building was starting to show signs of life. Early morning cleaning crews, the occasional executive arriving to prepare for the day. As the elevator descended, carrying him back down from the rarefied air of the 60th floor to the ordinary world below, Adrian thought about the night he'd just lived through. He'd done good work. Protected someone who needed protecting, stopped a betrayal before it could succeed. But more than that, he'd connected with another human being in a way he hadn't in years. Since Sarah died, he had been so focused on survival, on being everything Maya needed, that he'd forgotten what it felt like to have an adult conversation that wasn't about work or childcare logistics. Eleanor Blake had reminded him that he was still a person, not just a father or a contractor, still capable of existing in the world beyond the narrow lanes he'd carved out for himself. It was a strange feeling, unsettling and hopeful in equal measure. The elevator reached the ground floor. Adrian stepped out into the lobby, nodded to the security guard at the desk, and walked out into the Chicago morning. The city was waking up around him. The sky was shifting from black to gray to pink. The air was cool and fresh after the recycled atmosphere of the office building. Adrian pulled out his phone and sent a text to Maya. "On my way home, sweetheart. See you soon." Her response came immediately. "Daddy, I waited up, but Mrs. Chen made me go to bed. Are you okay?" Adrian smiled, warmth flooding through him. "I'm perfect, baby girl. Had to help someone with an important problem. I'll tell you all about it at breakfast." "Pancakes?" "Obviously pancakes." "Yay, love you, Daddy." "Love you more than all the stars, Maya." He pocketed his phone and headed for the parking garage where his aging Honda waited. As he drove through the quiet streets toward Logan Square, toward home and his daughter, and the normal life he'd built from the ruins of tragedy, Adrian felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not just in the work he'd done tonight, though that was part of it, but pride in the man he'd become, the father who put his daughter first, the professional who didn't compromise his ethics for convenience, the person who still believed that doing the right thing mattered even when it was hard. Sarah would have been proud too. Of the way he'd raised Maya, of the life he'd built for them, of the man he'd remained even after she was gone. The thought made his eyes sting with unexpected tears. He blinked them away, focused on the road, and drove toward home. The apartment was quiet when Adrian unlocked the door at 5:03 a.m. He moved carefully through the darkened living room, past Maya's art supplies scattered across the coffee table, past the stack of library books about marine biology that she'd insisted on checking out last week. The familiar chaos of their life together welcomed him home. Mrs. Chen was asleep on the couch, her reading glasses still perched on her nose, a mystery novel open across her chest. Adrian gently removed the glasses and set them on the side table, then covered her with the throw blanket Maya had crocheted last winter. Lumpy and uneven, but made with love. Mrs. Chen stirred, blinking awake. "Adrian? What time is it?" "Early. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake you." She sat up, smoothing her gray hair back into place. "Long night?" "You have no idea." Adrian pulled out his wallet and handed her twice her usual rate, plus extra. "Thank you for staying so late. I know this wasn't what you signed up for." Mrs. Chen waved away his thanks as she always did, but she pocketed the money. At 72, living on a fixed income, she needed it even if she was too proud to say so. "That girl of yours stayed up until almost 11, worrying about you. I finally had to promise her you'd make chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast before she'd close her eyes." Adrian smiled. "Chocolate chip pancakes it is." "She's a good girl, Adrian. Smart as a whip and twice as stubborn." "Gets that from her mother." "Gets that from both of you, I suspect." Mrs. Chen gathered her things, her book, her knitting bag, her sensible cardigan. At the door she paused. You look different tonight. Tired, yes, but something else. Something good happened? Adrian thought about Eleanor Blake, about the crisis averted, about the unexpected connection forged in the middle of the night. Maybe, he said carefully. I'm not sure yet. Mrs. Chen patted his arm with understanding that came from 7 decades of reading people. Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. Don't shut the door on possibilities just because you're comfortable with the familiar. She left before Adrian could ask what she meant by that, though he suspected he already knew. He locked the door behind her and walked quietly down the hall to Maya's room. The door was ajar, exactly the way she liked it, not closed enough to feel trapped, not open enough to let in too much hallway light. He pushed it open slowly, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness. Maya was sprawled across her twin bed like a starfish, covers kicked off, her dark curls tangled across the pillow. She wore her favorite pajamas, the ones with the dinosaurs that she'd technically outgrown 2 years ago but refused to give up. Her stuffed elephant, Mr. Trunks, was clutched in one arm. The glow-in-the-dark stars Adrian had helped her stick to the ceiling cast a soft green light over everything. Adrian stood in the doorway, just watching her breathe. This small person who'd become his entire world, this fierce, funny, brilliant little soul who made every sacrifice worth it. He thought about Eleanor's question from earlier. How do you do it? Balance everything? The truth was, he didn't balance anything. He just chose every single day to put Maya first. Everything else, his career, his social life, his own needs and wants, came second to making sure she felt loved, safe, and supported. Was it sustainable? Probably not. Was it healthy? Therapists would likely say no, but it was all Adrian knew how to do. It was the only way he could live with himself after Sarah died, knowing that at least he was giving their daughter everything he had. He walked into the room and gently pulled the covers back over Maya, tucking them around her shoulders. She stirred, mumbling something incoherent about penguins, but didn't wake. Adrian kissed her forehead. "Love you more than all the stars, baby girl," he whispered. Then he retreated to the bathroom, where he stood under the shower's hot spray for 20 minutes, letting the water wash away the exhaustion and tension of the night. When he emerged, he felt almost human again. He checked his phone while getting dressed. 2 messages waited. The first was from Eleanor Blake, sent just 15 minutes ago. "Made it home safely. Board meeting at 10 a.m. Wish me luck, and thank you again for everything, Adrian. You saved more than just files tonight." Adrian stared at that last sentence, trying to decode its meaning. Professional gratitude? Something more? He wasn't sure, and he was too tired to analyze it properly. He typed back, "You don't need luck. You have the truth on your side. Good luck anyway. Let me know how it goes." The second message was from his contracting agency. "Meridian Solutions requesting extension of your contract. Please confirm availability for meeting Monday 9 a.m. to discuss terms." Adrian sat on the edge of his bed, phone in hand, mind churning. The contract had been set to end in 2 weeks. He'd assumed that would be it. Wrap up the final security audit, collect his last paycheck, move on to the next job. But now Meridian wanted to extend. Because of last night? Because Eleanor Blake had made a call to HR and recommended they keep him? Or just coincidental timing? He didn't know. Wouldn't know until Monday. He set the phone aside and lay back on the bed, intending to rest his eyes for just a moment. The next thing he knew, Maya was shaking his shoulder and sunlight was streaming through the window. "Daddy, you're home! You're really home!" Adrian opened his eyes to find his daughter's face inches from his own, her expression a mixture of relief and excitement and residual worry. He pulled her into a fierce hug, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "I'm really home, sweetheart. Sorry I was out so late." Maya pulled back, her hands on his face, studying him with those dark eyes that were so much like Sarah's it sometimes hurt to look at them. "Mrs. Chen said you had to help someone with emergency. What happened? Was someone sick? Did you have to call an ambulance?" Adrian sat up, keeping Maya close. "Not that kind of emergency, a work emergency. Someone's computer was broken in a really complicated way, and I was the only one who knew how to fix it." "All night?" "All night." That's a really broken computer. It really was. Maya considered this, then brightened. "But you fixed it, right? Because you're really good at fixing things." I fixed it. Good. She bounced off the bed, suddenly energized. Now, you have to make chocolate chip pancakes because Mrs. Chen promised, and you can't break promises to old ladies or they get sad and then their cats get sad too. Adrian laughed, the sound surprising him with its genuineness. Mrs. Chen doesn't have cats. She should get cats. Everyone should have cats. Can we get a cat? We've discussed this, Maya. Our lease doesn't allow pets. Our lease is dumb. When I grow up and have my own house, I'm going to have 17 cats and nobody can stop me. 17 is a lot of cats. It's the perfect amount. Maya grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the kitchen. Come on, Daddy. The pancakes won't make themselves. They fell into their weekend morning routine with the ease of long practice. Adrian mixed the batter while Maya set the table, carefully placing napkins and forks with the precision of someone who took breakfast very seriously. She chattered the entire time about her week at school, the science project on weather patterns, the new girl in her class who moved from California, the unfairness of having to learn cursive when nobody even uses it anymore except for signatures. Adrian listened, asking questions, making appropriate sounds of interest and sympathy. This was his favorite part of parenting, the ordinary moments, the mundane conversations that stitched together the fabric of their relationship. The pancakes sizzled on the griddle, chocolate chips melting into the batter exactly the way Maya liked them. Adrian flipped them with practiced ease, plating them in the special stack that had become tradition. 3 pancakes tall, butter melting between each layer, syrup drizzled in a spiral pattern. They sat at their small kitchen table, the morning sun casting patterns across the worn linoleum floor. Maya attacked her pancakes with enthusiasm, while Adrian sipped coffee and felt the exhaustion of the sleepless night settling into his bones. Daddy? You look tired. Like, really, really tired. I am really, really tired. Then why aren't you sleeping? Because I'd rather have breakfast with you. Maya smiled, syrup on her chin. That's a good reason. She took another bite, then asked with studied casualness, the person you helped last night, was it a man or a lady? Adrian raised an eyebrow. Why does that matter? Just curious? A lady. A woman, I mean. The CEO of the company. CEO means boss, right? The biggest boss, yeah. Maya absorbed this information, her expression thoughtful. Was she nice? Adrian thought about Eleanor Blake, sharp and guarded at first, then gradually revealing layers of vulnerability and strength. The way she'd made him coffee, asked about Maya, shared pieces of her own story. The business card with her personal number written on the back, currently tucked in his wallet. Yes, he said. She was nice. Good. Mean people don't deserve to have their computers fixed. Maya swirled her fork through a puddle of syrup. Did she say thank you? She did, multiple times. Then she's definitely nice. Manners are important. This pronouncement was delivered with the absolute certainty of an 8-year-old quoting something an adult had taught her. Probably Adrian himself. They finished breakfast and Maya insisted on doing the dishes, even though it was technically Adrian's turn. You worked all night, she declared. You need to rest. I got this. She stood on her step stool at the sink, carefully washing each plate and fork, her tongue poking out in concentration. Adrian watched from the doorway, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. This kid, this incredible, compassionate, wise beyond her years kid. She was going to be okay. Despite losing her mother so young, despite having a father who worked too much and worried constantly and probably made 1,000 mistakes a day, she was going to be okay. Better than okay. She was going to be extraordinary. What are we doing today? Maya asked, setting the last clean fork in the drying rack. Adrian checked the time. 8:47 a.m. He should sleep. His body was screaming for sleep. But it was Saturday, and Saturday belonged to Maya. What do you want to do? Maya's face lit up with the particular joy of unlimited possibilities. Can we go to the Field Museum, please? They have the new ocean exhibit, and I really, really want to see the giant squid model. Adrian mentally calculated the cost. Admission for 2, parking, lunch, probably a souvenir from the gift shop because Maya had been saving her allowance and would want to spend it. Not cheap, but manageable. and the pure excitement on his daughter's face was worth every penny. Field Museum it is, but first you need to get dressed in something other than dinosaur pajamas. These are vintage dinosaur pajamas. They're fashionable. They're also inappropriate for a public museum. Maya sighed dramatically but scampered off to her room. Adrian heard her singing to herself as she got dressed, some pop song from the radio that she'd learned all the words to despite Adrian's best efforts to control her music consumption. His phone buzzed. Another text from Eleanor. About to walk into the lion's den. James from HR is with me. Legal counsel standing by. Victor has no idea what's coming. Adrian typed back. Remember, you have the evidence. You have the truth. He has nothing but stolen files full of corrupted garbage. You've got this. Her response came quickly. Confidence looks good on you, Adrian Hale. He stared at that message, uncertain how to interpret the tone. Professional? Friendly? Something else? Before he could overthink it, Maya reappeared wearing jeans, a t-shirt with a whale shark on it, and mismatched socks, one purple with stars, one green with stripes. Your socks don't match, Adrian observed. Fashion is about expressing yourself, Daddy. Miss Rodriguez told us that in art class. Ms. Rodriguez is an art teacher, not a fashion designer. She wears really cool scarves, so I trust her judgment. Adrian couldn't argue with that logic. All right, grab your jacket and your water bottle. And do you need to use the bathroom before we go? I'm 8, not 3. I know when I need to pee. Just checking. They took the bus to the museum. Maya pressed against the window the entire ride, narrating everything she saw. That dog is really fluffy. I bet it's a sheepdog. Or maybe a poodle mix. That lady has pink hair, which is so cool. When I'm older, can I dye my hair pink? That building is really tall. How many floors do you think it has? Probably like 1,000,000. Adrian let her voice wash over him, a familiar soundtrack to their weekends together. Other passengers smiled at Maya's enthusiasm, and one elderly woman commented, "She's delightful. You're very lucky." I know, Adrian said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. The Field Museum rose before them like a temple to natural history, its massive columns and grand staircase promising adventure and discovery. Maya practically vibrated with excitement as they climbed the steps. Inside, the museum was already crowded with weekend visitors, families with young children, school groups, tourists with cameras. Maya grabbed Adrian's hand and tugged him toward the ocean exhibit with single-minded determination. The exhibit was spectacular, floor-to-ceiling displays of marine life, interactive touchscreens explaining ocean ecosystems, and yes, a massive model of a giant squid suspended from the ceiling, its tentacles stretching 20 feet in every direction. Maya stood beneath it, mouth open in wonder. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's terrifying," Adrian corrected. "Terrifyingly beautiful." She read every placard, absorbed every fact, asked 1,000,000 questions that Adrian did his best to answer using the limited marine biology knowledge he possessed. They spent 2 hours in the ocean exhibit alone. Maya sketched the squid in her notebook. She carried it everywhere, constantly drawing, while Adrian sat on a bench and fought to keep his eyes open. His phone buzzed periodically with updates from Eleanor. Board meeting started. Victor looked smug. This is going to be satisfying. 20 minutes later, Victor just presented evidence of my mismanagement. Files won't open. He looks confused. 10 minutes after that, legal counsel just explained that Victor is being terminated effective immediately and faces criminal investigation for corporate espionage. He's turned an interesting shade of red. And finally, board voted unanimously to approve my restructuring plan. Victor escorted out by security. It's over. We won. Adrian typed back. Congratulations. You did it. We did it. None of this would have been possible without you. Adrian pocketed his phone, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and something else he couldn't quite name. Pride, certainly, but also a sense of connection to something beyond his usual sphere of work and parenthood. He'd made a real difference in someone's life last night, changed the trajectory of an entire company. It felt good, really good. Daddy, look. Maya had moved on to a display about coral reefs, her face pressed close to the glass. Did you know that coral can live for thousands of years? Thousands. That's like since ancient Rome. That's a long time, Adrian agreed. When I'm a marine biologist, I'm going to study coral reefs and figure out how to save them from climate change. I thought you wanted to be a veterinarian. I can be both. I'm very ambitious. They wandered through the rest of the museum, stopping at the dinosaur exhibits, Maya's enduring passion, and the ancient Egypt section, where she was fascinated by the mummies and the hieroglyphics. Adrian bought her a small stuffed squid from the gift shop, which she immediately named Professor Tentacles. By the time they left the museum, it was after 2 p.m., and Adrian's exhaustion had reached critical levels. Maya, in contrast, seemed to have boundless energy, chattering about everything they'd seen. They grabbed pizza for late lunch at a place near the bus stop. Nothing fancy, just good Chicago-style pizza and garlic bread. Maya ate 3 slices and stole half of Adrian's 4th, all while planning their next museum visit. Can we go to the Shed Aquarium next weekend? They have beluga whales, and I really want to see them, and maybe if we go early enough, we can watch them get fed, and Maya, sweetheart, take a breath. She paused, grinned, then continued at the same rapid pace. Okay, but seriously, can we go because belugas are so cool, and they're called sea canaries because they make singing sounds, and Adrian's phone rang, interrupting Maya's marine mammal dissertation. He glanced at the screen expecting Mrs. Chen or maybe the contracting agency. Instead, it was a number he didn't recognize with a Chicago area code. He answered cautiously. Hello? Adrian? It's Eleanor. Eleanor Blake. I hope I'm not interrupting. Adrian's heart rate picked up inexplicably. No, not at all. Maya and I are just having lunch. Across the table, Maya's eyes went wide with interest. She mouthed, the CEO lady? Adrian nodded. I wanted to thank you again, Eleanor continued, and let you know that everything went exactly as you predicted. Victor tried to present the stolen files. They were completely corrupted, and when legal explained what he'd done, Adrian, you should have seen his face. I wish I could have, Adrian admitted, smiling. The board terminated him on the spot. Criminal investigation is already underway, and my restructuring plan passed unanimously. Her voice was warm, genuinely happy in a way that sounded different from the guarded professional he'd met last night. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You would have figured something out. Maybe, but I'm grateful I didn't have to. There was a pause, then Eleanor's voice changed, became slightly less certain. Listen, I know this is probably terrible timing and you're with your daughter, but I wanted to ask you something. Okay? That dinner reservation I mentioned last night? It's tonight, 7 p.m. at Alinea. And I know it's short notice, and I know you probably have plans, but I meant what I said about bringing Maya. If you're available, I'd really like to have dinner with both of you, to say thank you properly. Adrian's mind went blank. Alinea was one of the most exclusive restaurants in Chicago. 3 Michelin stars, months-long waiting list, the kind of place where dinner for 2 could easily cost $500. Eleanor, that's incredibly generous, but you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Please, let me do this. She paused. Unless you have other plans? I completely understand if we don't have plans, Adrian said, looking at Maya, who was practically bouncing in her seat with curiosity. But are you sure? Maya's 8. She's well-behaved, but an 8-year-old at Alinea might be perfect, Eleanor interrupted. She'll be perfect. And honestly, after the day I've had, I could use some genuine enthusiasm and honesty. Kids are good at both. Adrian found himself smiling despite his reservations. Okay, yes, we'd love to have dinner with you. Excellent. I'll text you the details. 7 p.m. Don't worry about dress code. I'll handle everything. She hung up, leaving Adrian staring at his phone in bewilderment. Daddy, Maya said, her voice very serious. What just happened? I think we just got invited to dinner by the CEO I helped last night. The nice lady? Yes. At a fancy restaurant. Very fancy. Maya considered this, then nodded decisively. Okay, but I need to wear my good dress, the blue one with the flowers. And you need to shave because you look like a porcupine. Adrian laughed, running a hand over his stubbled jaw. I do, don't I? It's okay. We have time to make you presentable. She patted his hand reassuringly. Don't worry, Daddy. I'll help you pick out a nice shirt. They finished lunch and headed home, where Maya immediately disappeared into her room to agonize over outfit choices. Adrian stood in front of his own closet, staring at the limited options available. He owned exactly 2 dress shirts, one white, one light blue, 3 pairs of decent pants, one tie that he'd worn to Sarah's funeral and hadn't touched since. His only suit jacket was 5 years old and slightly too tight across the shoulders. This was not the wardrobe of a man who dined at 3 Michelin-star restaurants. But Eleanor had said not to worry about dress code, that she'd handle it. What did that even mean? His phone buzzed with a text. Car service will pick you up at 6:30. Dress smart casual. Nice jeans are fine. Maya can wear whatever makes her feel special. See you soon? Smart casual. Nice jeans. Okay, he could do that. Adrian showered for the second time that day, shaved carefully, and dressed in his best dark jeans and the light blue shirt. He even found a sport coat that fit reasonably well, a purchase from years ago that had rarely seen use. Maya emerged from her room wearing her beloved blue dress with the flower pattern, her curls carefully brushed and held back with a white headband. She'd even put on her fancy shoes, the patent leather Mary Janes they'd bought for a cousin's wedding last year. "How do I look?" she asked, spinning in a circle. "Like the most beautiful girl in Chicago," Adrian said honestly. "Good. Because first impressions are important. Ms. Rodriguez told us that to us. But Rodriguez gives a lot of life advice in art class. She's a very wise person." At exactly 6:30, a sleek black car pulled up in front of their apartment building. The driver, professional and courteous, opened the door for them. Maya's eyes went wide. "Daddy, this is so fancy. Are we being kidnapped by rich people?" "We're going to dinner with a rich person. Very different." "Okay, good. Mrs. Chen says you should never get in cars with strangers. But you know this lady, so it's probably fine." The drive to Alinea took 20 minutes through early evening traffic. Maya spent the entire time with her face pressed to the window, watching the city lights come alive. Adrian spent it trying not to think about how surreal this entire situation was. Last night, he'd been a contractor doing routine security work. Now, he was being chauffeured to one of the finest restaurants in America with his daughter to have dinner with a CEO he'd known for less than 24 hours. Life, as Mrs. Chen had said, had a way of surprising you. The car pulled up in front of Alinea's unmarked entrance, elegant and understated, exactly what Adrian would expect from a place that didn't need to advertise. The driver opened their door, and Maya stepped out like she'd been exiting luxury vehicles her entire life. Adrian followed, feeling distinctly out of his depth. Eleanor Blake was waiting in the small entry area, and Adrian barely recognized her. Gone was the CEO in the power suit. Instead, she wore a simple black dress and heels, her hair down around her shoulders, minimal makeup. She looked younger, more relaxed, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with corporate authority and everything to do with genuine warmth. "Adrian," she said, smiling, "I'm so glad you came. Thank you for inviting us." Eleanor's attention shifted to Maya, and her smile widened. "And you must be Maya. Your dad told me a lot about you last night." Maya, who was rarely shy, stuck out her hand with perfect formality. "Nice to meet you, Miss Blake. Thank you for inviting us to dinner. This restaurant is very elegant." Eleanor shook her hand solemnly. "Please, call me Eleanor. And you're very welcome. I've been looking forward to meeting you. Daddy says you're the boss of a big company." "I am." "That must be a lot of work." "It is. Do you like it?" The question was so direct, so genuinely curious, that Eleanor actually laughed. "Most days, yes, though yesterday was especially challenging. But Daddy fixed your computer, so now it's better, right?" "Your dad fixed a lot more than my computer. He helped me in ways I'm still trying to figure out how to thank him for properly." Maya nodded sagely. "Daddy's really good at helping people. He helps me with my homework and helps Mrs. Chen carry her groceries and helps the lady at the library find books, even though that's technically her job." Adrian felt his face warm. "Maya, it's true, you do." She turned back to Eleanor. "He's the best dad in the world. That's not just my opinion, it's a fact." Eleanor's expression softened into something Adrian couldn't quite read. "I believe you," she said quietly. They were escorted to their table, a prime location with a view of the open kitchen where chefs moved with choreographed precision. Maya was immediately fascinated, watching them plate dishes with artistic intensity. The meal that followed was unlike anything Adrian had ever experienced. Course after course of culinary artistry, food that was as much sculpture as sustenance. Maya approached each dish with fearless curiosity, asking questions about ingredients and preparation methods, charming the waitstaff with her genuine interest. Eleanor watched her with unconcealed delight. "She's remarkable," she told Adrian during one of Maya's bathroom trips. "Confident, curious, articulate. You've done an incredible job raising her. I just try not to screw up too badly on a daily basis." "You're doing more than that, trust me." Eleanor took a sip of her wine. "I meant what I said last night. She's lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have her. She's the reason I keep going. The reason any of this," he gestured vaguely, "makes sense." Maya returned, launched into a detailed explanation of the interesting art she'd seen in the restaurant's hallway, and the conversation shifted back to lighter topics. But Adrian caught Eleanor watching him throughout the meal with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. Curiosity? Interest? Something else entirely. He didn't know. Wasn't sure he wanted to know. His life was complicated enough without adding whatever this was to the equation. But he couldn't deny that something had shifted. Some door had opened that he hadn't even known was closed. And as the dinner wound down and Maya fell asleep against his shoulder in the car ride home, Adrian allowed himself to wonder what might be waiting on the other side. The following Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made Chicago feel alive with possibility. Adrian dropped Maya off at school, watching her run toward the building with Professor Tentacles tucked under one arm, already launching into an animated conversation with her best friend about their weekend adventures. "My dad and I had dinner with a CEO at the fanciest restaurant in the whole city," he heard her announce proudly before disappearing through the doors. Adrian smiled, shook his head, and checked his watch. The meeting with Meridian Solutions was scheduled for 9 a.m., 45 minutes away. Just enough time to grab coffee and mentally prepare for whatever contract extension discussion awaited him. His phone buzzed as he walked to his car. A text from Eleanor. "Good luck with your meeting this morning. I put in a strong recommendation. Hope that's okay." So she had intervened. Part of Adrian appreciated the gesture. Contract extensions meant steady income, which meant stability for Maya. But another part felt uneasy about the favoritism. The way personal connections were now bleeding into his professional life in ways he couldn't quite control. He typed back, "Thank you. That was very kind. How are you doing after everything?" Her response came quickly. "Exhausted, but victorious. The board wants a full security audit of all systems after the Victor situation. I told them I knew just the person for the job." Adrian stared at that message, understanding its implications. This wasn't just a contract extension. This was a significant expansion of his role at Meridian. More work, more responsibility, more money. Exactly what he needed, and exactly what made him nervous. He arrived at Meridian Solutions with 10 minutes to spare, signed in with building security, and took the elevator up to the human resources floor. The receptionist directed him to a conference room where James Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen despite the shared surname, waited with a folder of paperwork and a professional smile. "Mr. Hale, thank you for coming in," James gestured to a chair. "I'll be direct. After the events of this weekend, Eleanor Blake has recommended we not only extend your contract but expand it significantly. She's requesting a full security overhaul of our entire system infrastructure." "I see. This would be a 6-month project at minimum, possibly longer. Full-time hours, competitive rate increase, and if things go well, potential for permanent placement." James slid the folder across the table. "These are the proposed terms." Adrian opened the folder, scanning the numbers. The rate increase was more than competitive. It was generous. Almost too generous. The kind of offer that would change his financial situation dramatically. That would mean he could stop taking every contract that came his way. That would give him breathing room for the first time in years. "This is a substantial increase," Adrian said carefully. "You saved the company from a serious security breach and prevented what could have been a catastrophic leadership crisis. Miss Blake considers you worth every penny." James leaned forward. "Between you and me, I've never seen her advocate this strongly for anyone. Whatever you did Friday night made a hell of an impression." Adrian thought about those hours in Eleanor's office, the unexpected intimacy of crisis management at midnight, the way they'd gradually opened up to each other. The dinner at Alinea, Maya charming everyone in sight, Eleanor laughing genuinely for what Adrian suspected was the first time in weeks. I just did my job, he said. You did considerably more than that. So what do you think? Are you interested? Adrian looked at the contract again, at the numbers that represented security and stability, and maybe even the possibility of a future that wasn't quite so financially precarious. He thought about Maya, about the opportunities this could provide for her. Better schools, maybe. Summer camps, college savings that amounted to more than hope and prayer. I'm interested, he said, but I need to maintain some flexibility with my hours. My daughter has to come first. Ms. Blake anticipated that. The contract includes provisions for flexible scheduling as long as core responsibilities are met. You'd have autonomy to set your own hours within reason. Of course, Eleanor had thought of that. Of course, she'd remembered his priorities, his responsibilities, the 8-year-old girl who needed her father present and engaged. Then yes, Adrian said, extending his hand. I'm in. James shook it firmly. Excellent. We'll need you to start the expanded role next Monday. That gives you a week to wrap up your current projects and transition. They spent the next hour going over paperwork, discussing expectations, outlining the scope of the security audit. By the time Adrian left the building, he had a signed contract in hand and a future that looked decidedly different from the one he'd imagined just 72 hours ago. His phone rang as he reached his car. Eleanor's name flashed on the screen. Congratulations, she said when he answered. James just emailed me. Welcome to the extended Meridian family. Thank you for the recommendation, for pushing for the flexible hours, for everything. You earned it, Adrian. I'm just making sure you're properly compensated. There was a pause, then Eleanor's voice shifted, became less formal. Listen, I know this is probably overstepping, and tell me if I'm crossing a line, but would you be interested in getting coffee sometime? Just to talk about work, about life, about whatever. No pressure, no expectations, just coffee. Adrian's heart rate picked up inexplicably. Like a meeting? Like two people who discovered they enjoy each other's company getting coffee. Another pause. Unless you'd rather keep things strictly professional. Which I completely understand and respect. Adrian thought about the easy conversation at Alinea, the way Eleanor had listened to Maya's stories with genuine interest, the connection he'd felt that surprised him with its strength and suddenness. He thought about Mrs. Chen's words. Don't shut the door on possibilities just because you're comfortable with the familiar. Coffee sounds good, he heard himself say. When? Tomorrow afternoon? There's a place near the building, Intelligentsia. Do you know it? I can find it. 3 o'clock? 3 o'clock works. He could hear the smile in Eleanor's voice. Good. I'll see you then. She hung up, leaving Adrian standing in the parking garage, contract in one hand, phone in the other, wondering what exactly he'd just agreed to. That evening, after picking Maya up from school and helping her with math homework that involved fractions more complicated than seemed necessary for 3rd grade, Adrian found himself telling Mrs. Chen about the contract extension over tea in her apartment. That's wonderful news, she said, pouring chamomile into delicate china cups that had probably been wedding gifts 50 years ago. Steady work, good pay, flexibility, everything you need. Yeah, Adrian agreed, but his tone must have betrayed his uncertainty because Mrs. Chen raised an eyebrow. But nothing. It's great, really great. Adrian Hale, I've known you for 4 years. I can tell when something's bothering you. Adrian sipped his tea, buying time. The CEO who I helped, Eleanor Blake. She wants to get coffee, tomorrow, just the two of us. Ah. Mrs. Chen's expression shifted to something knowing and amused. And this troubles you why, exactly? Because I don't know what it means. Is it professional, personal, both, neither? Does it have to mean anything specific right now? I guess not, but I haven't, Mrs. Chen, I haven't had coffee with a woman who wasn't related to me or a coworker since Sarah died. I don't know how to do this anymore. Mrs. Chen set down her cup and fixed him with a look that was equal parts compassionate and stern. You're 34 years old, Adrian, still young, still allowed to have a life beyond work and parenting. Maya needs you to be happy, whole, human. She reached across the small table and patted his hand. Sarah wouldn't want you to stop living. You know that. Adrian felt his throat tighten. How do I know that? How does anyone know what someone who's gone would want? Because you knew her, because you loved her, because you know in your heart that she'd want you to find joy again, even if that joy looks different than what you had together. It feels like betrayal. It feels like grief. There's a difference. Mrs. Chen squeezed his hand gently. Go have coffee with this woman. See what happens. Maybe it's just coffee. Maybe it becomes friendship. Maybe it becomes something more. But you won't know unless you allow yourself the possibility. Adrian nodded, not trusting his voice to respond. And Adrian? Maya told me about the dinner Saturday night. She said Eleanor was really nice and made you smile a lot. When's the last time I heard Maya say someone made you smile? She's 8. She exaggerates. Children see things clearly precisely because they don't know how to lie to themselves yet. Mrs. Chen stood, collecting the teacups. Go have coffee. Be open. See what happens. The worst that can occur is you make a friend. The best, she smiled. Well, that's up to you to discover. The next afternoon, Adrian found himself standing outside Intelligentsia Coffee 15 minutes early, nerves jangling in a way he hadn't experienced since his first date with Sarah back in college. He felt ridiculous, a grown man anxious about coffee, but couldn't seem to calm the butterflies in his stomach. Eleanor arrived exactly at 3, wearing tailored pants and a cream-colored blouse, her hair pulled back in a professional ponytail. She looked every inch the CEO, but when she saw Adrian, her expression softened into something warmer. You're early, she observed. Habit. Maya's school pickup is always a race against the clock. I've learned to build in buffer time. Smart. She gestured toward the door. Shall we? They ordered. Adrian got a simple drip coffee. Eleanor chose some complicated espresso drink with foam art on top and found a table near the window. For a moment, they sat in slightly awkward silence, both seeming uncertain how to begin. So, Eleanor finally said, this is weird, right? Not bad weird, just weird. Adrian laughed, tension breaking. Very weird. I kept trying to figure out if this was a work meeting or something else. Something else. Definitely something else. Eleanor wrapped her hands around her cup. I wanted to see you without the crisis and the formal dinner and all the pressure. Just to talk. Like normal people. Are CEOs normal people? When we're not terrorizing boardrooms and firing embezzling executives, occasionally, yes. They fell into conversation more easily after that. Eleanor asked about Maya, about Adrian's history in cybersecurity, about how he'd ended up in Chicago. Adrian asked about Meridian's founding, about the challenges of building a company from nothing, about what Eleanor did when she wasn't working 80-hour weeks. Honestly, Eleanor admitted, I don't remember. It's been so long since I had real hobbies. I used to paint, watercolors, had a whole setup in my apartment, but I haven't touched it in maybe 2 years. You should start again. When? Between the morning meetings and the afternoon meetings and the evening meetings? You just spent an entire weekend dealing with corporate espionage. You survived. The company survived. Maybe the meetings can wait occasionally. Eleanor studied him over the rim of her cup. You have this way of cutting through nonsense and getting to the truth. It's refreshing. Most people in my life either tell me what they think I want to hear or try to manage me like I'm a problem to be solved. I don't know you well enough to have an agenda. Exactly. It's nice. She paused. Can I ask you something personal? Depends on how personal. What was she like? Your wife? Adrian took a breath, the familiar ache of Sarah's absence settling in his chest, but it didn't hurt quite as sharply as it used to. Time had softened the edges, even if it hadn't eliminated the loss. Sarah was fierce, he said slowly, passionate about everything, her work as a teacher, her friends, her family. She had this laugh that was way too loud for quiet spaces, and she never cared. She made friends with every person she met. Strangers became confidants in grocery store lines. He smiled at the memory. She wanted to save the world, one student at a time, and she probably would have if she'd had more time. She sounds wonderful. She was, and terrible at remembering to pay bills on time, and she sang off-key constantly, and she left wet towels on the bathroom floor despite a decade of me asking her not to. Adrian's smile widened. Perfect and imperfect. Real. How long were you married? 6 years when she died. Together for 10 total. Adrian traced the rim of his coffee cup. Cancer is cruel. It takes everything slowly enough that you watch it happen, but too fast to actually prepare. She fought for 18 months. Made it long enough to see Maya turn 4. Long enough to record video messages for birthdays she knew she'd miss. Long enough to make me promise I'd raise our daughter to be brave and kind and unafraid of the world. Have you? Adrian thought about Maya's fearless curiosity, her compassion, her stubborn insistence on finding joy even in difficult circumstances. I'm trying. Eleanor was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was soft. Thank you for sharing that. I know it probably wasn't easy. It gets easier. The talking about it, I mean. The missing her, that's permanent. But I've learned to carry it differently. He met Eleanor's eyes. What about you? Have you ever come close to marriage? Once, in my 20s. He proposed, I said yes, we set a date. And then Meridian started taking off and I realized I was more excited about quarterly projections than wedding planning. Eleanor laughed, but it sounded sad. He wanted someone who could be present, who could build a life with him. I wanted to build a company. Neither of us was wrong. We just wanted different things. Do you regret it? Some days, when I'm alone in my apartment at midnight reviewing contracts, or when I attend events solo while everyone else brings partners, or when I realize I'm 41 and my closest relationships are with my executive assistant and my attorney. She looked out the window at the Chicago street, busy with afternoon traffic. But then I walk into Meridian and see what we've built, see the hundreds of people we employ, the technology we're developing, the impact we're making, and I think maybe it was worth it. Maybe doesn't sound convinced. Maybe is honest. Eleanor turned back to him. Friday night, when you told me about Maya waiting for you at home, I realized I don't have anyone waiting for me. Not like that. Not someone whose entire world I am. She paused. It made me jealous, actually, which is absurd because I made these choices deliberately, but still. Adrian understood that loneliness had lived in it himself for 4 years. It's not too late, you know, to have people waiting, to build something beyond the company. Isn't it? I'm 41, set in my ways, married to my work. My neighbor is 72 and just started dating again after her husband died 10 years ago. She says it's never too late to surprise yourself. Eleanor smiled. Your neighbor sounds wise. She is, gives unsolicited advice over chamomile tea. It's actually quite helpful. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing naturally from topic to topic, books they'd read, places they wanted to travel, childhood memories, hopes for the future. Adrian found himself laughing more than he had in months, genuinely engaged in a way that felt both foreign and wonderful. Eventually, Eleanor checked her watch and sighed. I have a 4:30 meeting I can't miss. Budget review with the finance team. The glamorous life of a CEO. Endlessly thrilling. She stood, gathering her things. Thank you for this, Adrian, for the coffee and the conversation, and for being direct with me. I needed this more than I realized. Me too, Adrian admitted, standing as well. They walked outside together, pausing on the sidewalk. The autumn afternoon was fading into early evening, the city's lights beginning to glow against the darkening sky. Same time next week? Eleanor asked, and there was something vulnerable in the question, as if she wasn't quite sure he'd say yes. Same time next week, Adrian confirmed. Eleanor smiled, genuine and warm. It's a date. I mean, not a date, just a... You know what I mean. I know what you mean. She laughed, slightly embarrassed. Right. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now before I make this more awkward. It's not awkward. Liar. But a kind one. Eleanor touched his arm briefly. A gesture so quick, Adrian almost missed it. See you next week, Adrian Hale. He watched her walk away, disappearing into the flow of pedestrian traffic, before heading to his own car with a lightness in his chest that felt dangerously close to hope. The weeks that followed fell into a new rhythm. Adrian started his expanded role at Meridian, diving into the comprehensive security audit with the same meticulous attention that had saved Eleanor from Victor's sabotage. He worked mostly from home, occasionally coming into the office for meetings, his flexible schedule allowing him to maintain his commitment to Maya. And every Tuesday at 3, he met Eleanor for coffee at Intelligentsia. They never called them dates, though Adrian suspected they were becoming exactly that. They talked about everything and nothing, work challenges and parenting victories, world events and personal philosophies. Eleanor told him about board politics and startup war stories. Adrian shared Maya's latest art projects and the ongoing saga of whether they should get a cat despite their lease restrictions. Slowly, carefully, a friendship deepened into something neither of them was quite ready to name. By the 4th week, Eleanor suggested they vary the routine. "There's an art exhibit at the MCA I've been wanting to see. Any interest in going Saturday afternoon?" Adrian hesitated, thinking about his standing weekend tradition with Maya. But then he had an idea. "What if Maya comes with us? She loves art museums." "I'd love that," Eleanor said immediately. "Honestly, I'd love that." So Saturday afternoon found the 3 of them wandering through the Museum of Contemporary Art, Maya providing running commentary on every piece with the kind of unfiltered honesty that made both adults laugh. "This painting looks like someone spilled their breakfast," she declared in front of an abstract expressionist piece. "That's Jackson Pollock," Eleanor explained. "He's famous for his drip technique." "He's famous for making messes?" "Essentially, yes. I could be famous then. My room looks like this every morning." Adrian caught Eleanor's eye over Maya's head, both of them trying not to laugh. There was something easy about this, something natural. The 3 of them together felt less like an awkward arrangement and more like something that fit, puzzle pieces sliding into place. After the museum, they got ice cream at a nearby shop. Maya ordered something ridiculous with gummy bears and hot fudge, then proceeded to tell Eleanor stories about school with the kind of animated enthusiasm that required frequent pauses for brain freeze. "And then Tommy Rodriguez said that girls can't be astronauts, and I told him he was historically inaccurate because Sally Ride went to space in 1983, and also he should read more books before making sweeping gender-based generalizations." Eleanor nearly choked on her coffee. "You said that? To another 3rd grader?" "He needed to be educated. Miss Rodriguez says education is the foundation of equality." "Ms. Rodriguez sounds like an excellent teacher." "She is. She has 17 scarves and wears a different one every day." Adrian watched the interaction with a warmth spreading through his chest. This was what he hadn't realized he'd been missing. Not just adult companionship, but the possibility of family expanding beyond just him and Maya. Someone else who could appreciate his daughter's brilliance, who could laugh at her precociousness, who could be present in their lives in a way that added rather than subtracted. Later, after they dropped Eleanor off at her apartment building, a converted warehouse in River North with floor-to-ceiling windows and the kind of understated luxury Adrian associated with people who didn't need to prove their wealth, Maya was quiet in the back seat. "Daddy?" "Yeah, sweetheart?" "I like Eleanor. She's nice, and she laughs at my jokes." "She does." "Do you like her?" Adrian caught Maya's eyes in the rearview mirror. "I do. Is that okay with you?" Maya considered this with the seriousness she applied to all important questions. "Mom would want you to be happy. She told me that in one of her videos." Adrian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "She did?" "Yeah, the one for my 10th birthday. She said that I should make sure you don't spend your whole life being sad because she loved you too much to want that." Maya paused. "I wasn't supposed to watch it yet, but I found it on your computer when I was looking for my science project pictures." "Maya." I know, I shouldn't snoop. But Daddy, are you happy with Eleanor?" Adrian thought about Tuesday afternoons at Intelligentsia, about conversations that made him think and laugh and feel present in his own life. About the way Eleanor asked about Maya with genuine interest. About how she remembered small details from their conversations. About the gradual easing of loneliness that had been his constant companion for 4 years. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think I am." "Good. Then you should keep seeing her because Miss Rodriguez also says that happiness is important for mental health." Adrian laughed despite the emotion clogging his throat. "Miss Rodriguez is very wise." "I know. That's why I listened to her." That night, after Maya was asleep, Adrian found himself digging through old files on his computer until he located the folder Sarah had created before she died. 24 video messages, one for each of Maya's birthdays from age 5 through 28. He'd only allowed Maya to watch the ones appropriate for her age, saving the rest for future years. He opened the file labeled "For Adrian, After I'm Gone." Sarah appeared on screen, thin from chemotherapy but smiling with determination. This had been recorded maybe a month before she died, in their bedroom, late at night when Maya was asleep. "Hi, love," she said, and Adrian's heart clenched at the familiar endearment. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone and you're struggling with what comes next. So I'm going to make this simple. Live. Not just exist, not just survive for Maya's sake. Actually live. Fall in love again if someone wonderful comes along. Laugh without feeling guilty. Build a future that includes more than memories of me." She paused, wiping away a tear. "I know you, Adrian Hale. I know you'll throw yourself into being the perfect father and forget that Maya needs you to be a whole person, not just a parent. She needs to see you happy, to see you taking chances, to see you open to whatever possibilities life brings. That's the example I want you to set for her." Sarah leaned closer to the camera, her expression fierce despite her weakening body. Promise me you won't waste your one precious life being loyal to my memory at the expense of your future. Love someone new. Let yourself be vulnerable. Take risks. And when you do, know that I'm cheering you on, wherever I am. Because loving you was the greatest adventure of my life. And I want you to have that adventure again." The video ended, leaving Adrian staring at the frozen image of his late wife's smile. He cried then, really cried, for the first time in months. Cried for Sarah and everything they'd lost. Cried for the years of loneliness and fear and careful self-protection. Cried for the guilt he'd been carrying, the sense that moving forward meant leaving her behind. But beneath the grief, something else stirred. Permission. Release. The understanding that loving someone new didn't erase what he'd had with Sarah. It honored it by proving he was still capable of opening his heart, still willing to risk the pain of loss for the possibility of connection. When the tears finally stopped, Adrian picked up his phone and texted Eleanor. "Thank you for today. Maya had a wonderful time. So did I." Her response came quickly. "Me too. Same time next Saturday? There's a science museum exhibit on marine biology Maya might enjoy." Adrian smiled, typed his response with hands that felt steadier than they had in years. "It's a date." This time, he meant it. The weeks turned into months with a swiftness that surprised Adrian. Halloween came and went with Maya dressed as a marine biologist, complete with a lab coat borrowed from Eleanor and a homemade name tag that read, "Dr. Maya Hale, Squid Specialist." Eleanor had shown up at their apartment door that evening with a bowl of candy and an offer to accompany them trick-or-treating, claiming she'd never actually done it as a child. "Your parents didn't take you?" Maya had asked, shocked by this revelation. "My parents were busy building their own business. Halloween was considered frivolous." Eleanor had said it matter-of-factly, without bitterness, but Adrian caught the shadow that crossed her face. "Then you have to come with us," Maya had declared. "Everyone deserves to experience Halloween properly. It's basically a human right." So Eleanor had walked the neighborhood streets with them, marveling at decorations, laughing at Maya's strategic approach to candy acquisition, and looking more relaxed than Adrian had ever seen her. At one house, an elderly couple had assumed Eleanor was Maya's mother, and neither Adrian nor Eleanor had rushed to correct them. The moment had passed naturally, but it lingered in Adrian's mind for days afterward, this glimpse of what their lives might look like to the outside world. By Thanksgiving, Eleanor had become a regular fixture in their lives. She'd accepted Mrs. Chen's invitation to join their small celebration, just the four of them around Adrian's second-hand dining table, eating turkey that Adrian had only slightly overcooked, and listening to Maya's elaborate theory about why mashed potatoes were scientifically superior to all other foods. "It's about texture and versatility," Maya had explained seriously. "You can add butter, gravy, cheese, even mix in vegetables if you're trying to be healthy. Plus, the molecular structure after boiling and mashing creates this perfect consistency that—" "Maya, where are you getting this information?" Adrian had interrupted. "YouTube. There's this cooking channel that explains food science. It's very educational." Eleanor had laughed so hard she'd nearly choked on her wine, and Mrs. Chen had patted her back while wearing an expression of deep satisfaction. Later, while doing dishes, Mrs. Chen had whispered to Adrian, "That woman looks at you like you hung the moon. Don't be dense about it." "I'm not being dense. You're being cautious, which is understandable but unnecessary. Life is short, Adrian. Sarah knew that better than anyone." Now it was early December, and Adrian found himself standing in Eleanor's apartment for the first time, ostensibly to help her set up the new security system he'd recommended after completing Meridian's audit. But really, he suspected this was Eleanor's way of letting him further into her life, of showing him the private space she rarely shared with anyone. The apartment was stunning, open concept, industrial chic with exposed brick and modern furnishings. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Chicago River. Everything was immaculate, almost magazine perfect, except for one corner where an easel stood covered with a drop cloth, surrounded by tubes of watercolor paint and unopened packages of paper. Adrian gestured toward it. "You started painting again." Eleanor followed his gaze, her expression sheepish. "You shamed me into it. All that talk about not letting work consume everything. I bought supplies 3 weeks ago, but haven't actually used them yet." "Why not?" "Because I'm terrified I'll be terrible at it after so long away. Because it feels indulgent when I have quarterly reports to review. Because..." She trailed off, looking vulnerable. "But because what if I'm not the person I used to be? What if I can't access that part of myself anymore?" Adrian walked to the easel, pulled off the drop cloth. "There's only one way to find out." "Now?" "Why not now? I can set up the security system on my own. It's straightforward. You should paint." Eleanor looked at him, then at the easel, then back at him. "You're serious?" "Completely. When's the last time you did something just because it brought you joy? No business justification, no networking opportunity, no strategic value. Just joy." She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it, clearly unable to come up with an answer. "Exactly," Adrian said gently. "So paint. I'll work on the security system. We'll order takeout when we're both done. Maya's at a sleepover tonight, so I actually have time for once." Eleanor bit her lip, clearly torn between decades of rigid self-discipline and the temptation of something she'd denied herself for too long. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but if it's terrible, you're not allowed to judge." "Deal." Adrian set to work installing the security sensors while Eleanor, after several false starts, began mixing colors on a palette. He watched her from the corner of his eye as he worked, noting the way her shoulders gradually relaxed, how the tight, professional mask she usually wore slowly dissolved into something softer and more open. An hour passed in comfortable silence, broken only by the occasional frustrated sound from Eleanor or the beep of Adrian testing sensors. The December sun set early, painting the apartment in shades of amber and rose, and Eleanor worked with increasing confidence, her brush moving across paper with growing assurance. "Can I see?" Adrian asked eventually, wiping his hands on a towel. Eleanor hesitated, then stepped aside. On the paper was a watercolor of the Chicago River at sunset, loose and impressionistic, not photorealistic, but capturing something essential about the city's beauty. The colors bled into each other with deliberate spontaneity, creating depth and movement that spoke of skill that hadn't entirely faded despite years of neglect. "Eleanor, this is beautiful. You're being kind." "I'm being honest. This is really, genuinely beautiful. You have talent." She studied the painting critically. "It's rusty. The technique is sloppy in places. I use too much water on the left side." "It's perfect because it's real. Because you made it. Because for the last hour, you forgot to be a CEO and just existed as a human being doing something that makes you happy." Adrian met her eyes. "That's worth more than technical perfection." Eleanor's expression shifted into something Adrian couldn't quite read. Gratitude mixed with longing, mixed with fear. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, Adrian's phone rang. Maya's name flashed on the screen, which was odd because she was supposed to be at her friend Sophie's house for the sleepover. Adrian answered immediately, concern spiking. "Hey, sweetheart, everything okay?" "Daddy?" Maya's voice was small, uncertain in a way that instantly put Adrian on alert. "Can you come get me?" "What happened? Are you hurt?" "No, I want to come home. Sophie's older brother brought some friends over, and they're being loud, and I don't like it. And her mom said I was being dramatic, but I really want to come home, please?" Adrian was already grabbing his jacket, I'll be there in 15 minutes. Stay in Sophie's room with the door closed, okay? Okay. Thank you, Daddy. He hung up and turned to find Eleanor already pulling on her coat. I'm coming with you, she said, leaving no room for argument. You don't have to. Adrian, an 8-year-old girl just asked her father to rescue her from an uncomfortable situation. I'm not letting you handle this alone. Besides, 2 adults showing up sends a stronger message than one. Adrian wanted to protest, to maintain the boundary between his parenting responsibilities and his developing relationship with Eleanor. But the truth was, he appreciated the support, and maybe that was okay. Maybe letting someone help didn't make him a bad father. Maybe it just made him human. They drove to Sophie's house in Eleanor's car, a sleek BMW that handled Chicago's streets with the same efficiency she brought to everything else. Maya was waiting on the front porch when they arrived, her overnight bag clutched in her arms, looking smaller and more uncertain than Adrian had seen her in months. He was out of the car before Eleanor had fully stopped, sweeping Maya into a hug. I've got you, baby girl. You're okay. I'm sorry I made you leave Eleanor's house. Don't apologize. You did exactly right calling me. He pulled back to look at her face. What happened? Sophie's brother is in high school, and he brought his friends over, and they were being really loud and kind of mean, and Sophie's mom said we should just stay in her room, but I could hear them laughing about stuff that didn't sound nice, and I just wanted to come home. Maya's words tumbled out in a rush. I'm not being a baby, am I? No, sweetheart. You're being smart. If something feels wrong, you listen to that feeling. Eleanor had joined them on the porch, and she crouched down to Maya's level. Your instincts were absolutely correct. You should never feel obligated to stay somewhere you're uncomfortable, and your dad will always come get you. That's what good parents do. Maya nodded, then surprised them both by hugging Eleanor. Thank you for coming too. Of course. We're a team, right? The words were casual, but their impact wasn't. Maya pulled back, smiling for the first time since they'd arrived. Yeah, we're a team. Sophie's mother appeared at the front door looking annoyed. Maya, honey, there's no reason to leave. The boys are just being boys. You girls need to learn to eat. We're leaving, Adrian interrupted, his voice polite but firm. Thank you for having Maya over, but we'll be going now. The drive home was quiet. Maya sat in the back seat, clutching Professor Tentacles, looking out the window. Eleanor drove with one hand, the other resting on the center console where Adrian's hand found it without conscious thought. Their fingers intertwined naturally, and neither of them pulled away. Back at the apartment, Adrian got Maya settled with hot chocolate and her favorite movie while Eleanor excused herself to make a phone call. When she returned, she looked serious. I just spoke with someone I know on the board of Sophie's school, made a few discreet inquiries about oversight for student events. Not making accusations, just ensuring proper protocols are in place going forward. Adrian stared at her. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Maya felt unsafe. That's unacceptable. And while I can't fix every situation, I can use my connections to ensure schools take these concerns seriously. You used your CEO influence for my 8-year-old daughter. I used my CEO influence for a child who matters to me. Eleanor said it simply, as if it were obvious. Is that okay? Adrian pulled her into a hug, surprising them both. More than okay. Thank you. Eleanor's arms came around him, and they stood there in his small apartment kitchen, holding each other while Maya's movie played in the next room. It felt monumental and ordinary at once. This moment of connection, of partnership, of becoming something neither of them had planned but both clearly needed. When they finally pulled apart, Eleanor's eyes were bright. I should probably go. Let you two have your evening. Or you could stay, Adrian heard himself say. Watch the movie with us. I'll make popcorn. It won't be fancy like Alinea, but I'd love that, Eleanor interrupted. Really love that. So they settled on the worn couch, Maya between them, Adrian on one side, Eleanor on the other, and watched an animated movie about talking fish while eating popcorn from a mixing bowl because Adrian didn't own a proper popcorn bowl. Maya provided running commentary about the marine biology and accuracies, and Eleanor asked questions that suggested genuine interest rather than polite tolerance. Halfway through the movie, Maya fell asleep, her head on Eleanor's shoulder. Eleanor looked down at the sleeping child, then over at Adrian with an expression of wonder mixed with terror. This is real, isn't it? She whispered. Whatever this is between us. It's becoming real. Yeah. Adrian whispered back. Is that okay? Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, gently stroking Maya's hair with a tenderness that made Adrian's heart ache. I'm terrified, she finally admitted. I've spent my entire adult life building walls, maintaining control, keeping people at a manageable distance. And you two just walked right through all of it, like the walls weren't even there. We can slow down if you need to. That's the thing. I don't want to slow down. I want this. I want Tuesday coffee dates and Saturday museums and emergency pickups and movie nights on worn couches. I want to be part of this, part of your lives. But I have no idea how to do this, Adrian. I've never been anyone's partner, never been a parental figure, never had to think about anyone's needs beyond my own and my company's. Neither did I when Maya was born, Adrian said quietly. Sarah and I were terrified. We'd read all the books, taken the classes, prepared as much as possible, and then they handed us this tiny human, and we had no idea what we were doing. But we figured it out. Together. One day at a time, one crisis at a time, one small victory at a time. And then Sarah died, and you had to figure it out alone. For a while, yes. But now, he reached across Maya's sleeping form to take Eleanor's hand. Maybe I don't have to be alone anymore. Maybe we could figure this out together, if you want. Eleanor's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I'm scared, but I want. Me too, on both counts. They sat like that for a while, holding hands over Maya's sleeping form, watching the movie without really seeing it, both processing the magnitude of what they were acknowledging. This wasn't just casual dating anymore. This was building something real, something that included a child who'd already lost one parent and couldn't afford to lose another person she was learning to trust. The weight of that responsibility settled over both of them, heavy and sacred. Eventually, Adrian carried Maya to her bedroom, tucking her in with practiced ease. When he returned to the living room, Eleanor was studying the photos on his bookshelf, pictures of Maya at various ages, a few of Sarah, several of all three of them together from before the cancer diagnosis. She was beautiful, Eleanor said, gesturing to a photo of Sarah laughing at the camera, Maya as a toddler on her hip. She was. Do you still love her? The question was asked without jealousy, just curiosity and maybe a need to understand where she fit in the landscape of Adrian's heart. I'll always love her, Adrian said honestly. She gave me Maya. She made me a father. She taught me what it means to put someone else first. That doesn't go away just because she's gone. I'm not asking you to choose between past and present. I know, but I need you to understand. Loving Sarah doesn't diminish what I'm feeling for you. They're different things, different chapters, both real, both important, both part of who I am. Eleanor turned to face him fully. What are you feeling for me, Adrian? The question hung in the air between them, demanding honesty that Adrian wasn't sure he was ready to give. But Eleanor had been brave enough to show up tonight, brave enough to acknowledge her fears, brave enough to want this despite her terror. She deserved his courage in return. I'm falling for you, he said simply. Maybe have been since that first night when you asked about the woman I was rushing home to and I told you about Maya. Since you made me coffee at 3 a.m. and listened to me talk about Sarah without looking uncomfortable. Since you showed up at Alinea and charmed my daughter and looked at both of us like we were gifts instead of complications. Eleanor's breath hitched. Adrian, you don't have to say anything back. I just need you to know because I'm tired of being careful, tired of protecting myself from potential hurt. Life is short and uncertain, and I've already lost one person I loved. If I'm going to risk that pain again, I want it to be with full honesty. I'm falling for you, Eleanor Blake, and I think Maya is too. For a moment, Eleanor just stared at him, her expression cycling through shock and joy and fear. Then she crossed the space between them and kissed him. It was their first kiss, tentative at first, then deepening as 4 months of careful restraint finally broke. Adrian's hands found her waist. Eleanor's fingers tangled in his hair, and for a few perfect seconds, the world narrowed to just the two of them and this moment of connection they'd both been dancing around for weeks. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Eleanor rested her forehead against his. I'm falling for you too, she whispered. Both of you. And it terrifies me because I've never wanted anything this much outside of my company. I don't know how to balance this. Don't know how to be what you both need, but I want to learn. If you'll be patient with me while I figure it out. We'll figure it out together, Adrian promised. No rush, no pressure, just honesty and patience and showing up for each other. I can do that. Eleanor pulled back enough to meet his eyes. Though, fair warning, I'm going to be terrible at this sometimes. I'll work too much, forget to text back, struggle with emotional availability. Old habits die hard. And I'll be overprotective of Maya, second-guess everything. Probably freak out periodically about whether I'm doing right by her memory of her mother. We're both going to mess up. So we'll mess up together and forgive each other and keep trying. Exactly. They kissed again, softer this time, sealing the promise they were making to each other. When they finally settled back on the couch, Eleanor curled into Adrian's side, his arm around her shoulders, both of them processing the enormity of what had just shifted between them. Stay tonight, Adrian said after a while. Not like that. I'm not ready for Maya to wake up and find you here in a way that requires complicated explanations. But stay a little longer. Talk to me. Tell me something about yourself I don't know yet. Eleanor thought for a moment. When I was 12, I wanted to be a painter. Not a CEO, not a business owner, an artist. I used to sketch everything. Buildings, people, landscapes. Filled dozens of notebooks with drawings. My parents found them and told me art was a hobby, not a career. That I needed to think practically, plan for financial security, use my intelligence for something profitable. So you built a tech company instead. So I built a tech company and put away my sketchbooks and convinced myself they were right. And maybe they were in some ways. Meridian has given me financial security beyond anything I imagined. But I look at Maya's art covering your refrigerator, her enthusiasm for creation without worrying about market viability or profit margins, and I wonder what I might have become if I'd chosen differently. It's not too late, Adrian said. You started painting again today. That's a beginning. A beginning of what? Of remembering that you're more than your job title, that productivity isn't the only measure of worth, that sometimes making something beautiful is enough, even if it never earns a penny. He kissed the top of her head. You've spent 20 years building a company. Maybe the next 20 can be about building a life. Eleanor was quiet, absorbing this. What if I'm not good at it? The life building, I mean. What if I'm too damaged by corporate culture, too conditioned for 60-hour work weeks, too comfortable with emotional distance? Then we'll work on it. Together. Maya and I are pretty good teachers when it comes to forcing people to slow down and enjoy the small moments. Is that what I'm signing up for? Forced enjoyment of small moments? Among other things, also terrible dad jokes, elaborate art projects, frequent discussions of marine biology, and the occasional emergency pickup from uncomfortable sleepovers. Eleanor laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Sounds terrible. Where do I sign? Right here. Adrian tapped the spot over his heart. Fair warning, though. The contract is binding. No corporate espionage escape clauses. I'll have my lawyers review the terms. Your lawyers will find that the primary term is show up and be present. Think you can manage that? Eleanor shifted to look at him directly. I'm going to try. Really try. Not just for you, but for Maya. She deserves adults in her life who are reliable, who keep promises, who don't disappear when things get complicated. She's already attached to you, you know, talks about you constantly. Eleanor says this, Eleanor thinks that. You've become one of her favorite people. The feeling is mutual. That kid is extraordinary, brilliant and kind and brave in ways I never was at her age. Eleanor paused. I want to be worthy of her trust, of both your trust. You already are. You showed up tonight without hesitation. You used your influence to make sure she feels safer going forward. You watched an animated movie about fish and asked genuine questions about the science. That's not nothing, Eleanor. That's everything. They talked for another hour about childhoods and first loves and career failures and small victories and all the messy, beautiful, complicated pieces that make up a human life. At midnight, Eleanor finally stood to leave, both of them reluctant to end the evening but acknowledging the lateness of the hour. At the door, she kissed him once more, soft and sweet and full of promise. Tuesday coffee? She asked. Tuesday coffee, Adrian confirmed. And Saturday, if you're free, Maya wants to see the holiday lights at Lincoln Park Zoo. I'm free. I'll make sure I'm free. Eleanor, you don't have to rearrange your entire schedule. I want to. That's the whole point, isn't it? Choosing this, choosing you both, actively making space in my life instead of just fitting you into the margins. She smiled. Besides, I've never seen the zoo lights either. Apparently, I've been missing out on a lot of fundamental human experiences. Well, prepare yourself. Maya's enthusiasm for holiday lights borders on manic. I can handle manic. I run a tech company. Adrian laughed, pulled her in for one more kiss, then watched her walk down the hallway to the elevator. She turned back once, waving, her smile visible even from a distance. After she left, Adrian stood in his apartment doorway, feeling the shift that had occurred tonight settling into his bones. Fear mingled with hope, uncertainty mixed with excitement, grief for what he'd lost tangled with gratitude for what he was finding. He checked on Maya one more time before heading to bed. She was sprawled across her mattress, Professor Tentacles clutched in one arm, her face peaceful in sleep. On her nightstand sat a framed photo of Sarah holding newborn Maya in the hospital, a moment frozen in time when their family had been complete in a different way. Adrian touched the frame gently. "She's good for us," he whispered to the photo. "Eleanor. She makes me laugh, makes me think, makes me remember that I'm more than just Maya's dad. I think you'd like her. I think you'd approve." The photo, of course, didn't answer, but in the quiet of his daughter's room, Adrian felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. Permission granted, not from Sarah exactly, but from himself. The understanding that moving forward didn't mean leaving behind, that new love didn't erase old love, that his heart was big enough to hold both grief and joy. He kissed Maya's forehead, turned off her light, and went to bed with his phone showing a text from Eleanor. "Thank you for tonight, for trusting me with something so precious, for letting me be part of this. I won't take it for granted." Adrian typed back, "Thank you for showing up, for being brave enough to try, for seeing us and wanting to stay anyway." Her response came immediately, "Always. I'm not going anywhere." And for the first time in 4 years, Adrian believed that might actually be true. Christmas arrived in Chicago with fresh snow and the kind of magic that only happens when a city transforms itself into something out of a storybook. Maya had spent weeks making handmade ornaments for their small apartment tree, paper snowflakes cut with meticulous precision, painted pine cones collected from Lincoln Park, and a construction paper angel that looked slightly deranged but which she insisted had character. Eleanor had been invited to their Christmas Eve celebration, and Adrian found himself nervously cleaning the apartment for the third time that afternoon while Maya supervised from the couch. "Daddy, you're being weird. Eleanor has seen our apartment before." "I know, but this is different. This is Christmas. It's just another day with presents and cookies." "It's not just another day, sweetheart. It's the first real holiday we're spending together as—" Adrian trailed off, unsure how to finish that sentence. "As a family?" Maya supplied helpfully. "Because that's what we are now, right? You and me and Eleanor, a family." Adrian sat down beside her, his heart both swelling and aching at her casual acceptance of this new reality. "Is that okay with you? Really okay? I know we've talked about it, but if you have any doubts or worries—" "Daddy, stop." Maya put her small hand on his. "I like Eleanor. Like really, really like her. She's smart and funny, and she listens when I talk about ocean stuff, even though I know I talk about it too much. She bought me those marine biology books for my birthday, even though they were college level because she said smart kids deserve challenging material. She remembers that I don't like pickles and always asks how Professor Tentacles is doing, even though he's a stuffed animal and obviously fine. Those are all good reasons. Plus," Maya continued, her voice getting quieter, "she makes you happy. Like, really happy. Not just I'm doing okay, happy, but actually happy, happy. I see you smile more now, laugh more. You stopped looking so tired all the time." She paused, her dark eyes serious beyond her years. "Mom would want that. She told me in her video. She said I should make sure you find happiness again." Adrian pulled her into a fierce hug, overwhelmed by the wisdom and compassion of this 8-year-old who'd been through so much and somehow emerged kind and brave. "When did you get so smart?" "I was born this way. It's genetic." Maya pulled back, grinning. "Now stop cleaning. The apartment looks fine. Eleanor doesn't care if there's dust on the bookshelf." The doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock, because Eleanor Blake was nothing if not punctual. Adrian opened the door to find her bundled in a long coat, her arms full of wrapped presents and a bottle of wine, snowflakes melting in her dark hair. "Merry Christmas Eve," she said, smiling in a way that made Adrian's heart skip. "You didn't have to bring so much," Adrian protested, even as he helped her with the packages. "Yes, I did. It's my first real Christmas celebration in probably 20 years. I'm overcompensating." She shed her coat, revealing a dark red sweater that looked both elegant and comfortable, the kind of thing Adrian suspected she'd bought specifically because she was learning to dress for life outside the boardroom. Maya appeared from her room wearing her Christmas dress, green velvet with a white collar that she'd picked out herself despite Adrian's gentle suggestions toward something less formal. "Eleanor, you're here. Did you bring the thing?" "Maya," Adrian warned. "That's rude," but Eleanor laughed. "Yes, I brought the thing, though I'm starting to regret telling you about it because now the surprise is ruined. I won't tell Daddy what it is. I'm excellent at keeping secrets. You told me about my own surprise birthday party 3 weeks in advance. That was different. You deserved to know so you could act surprised properly." Maya turned to Eleanor. "Can I see it now, please?" Eleanor glanced at Adrian, who shrugged helplessly. She pulled a medium-sized wrapped box from her bag and handed it to Maya. "Technically, you're supposed to wait until tomorrow morning, but I have a feeling you're going to wear me down anyway." Maya tore into the wrapping with enthusiasm that sent paper flying everywhere. Inside was a professional-grade junior microscope, complete with prepared slides and a guidebook on cellular biology. "Oh my gosh," Maya breathed, her eyes wide. "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." "This is the best present ever in the history of presents. Daddy, look! I can study actual cells. I can see microorganisms. I can be a real scientist." "You are already a real scientist, sweetheart. But now I have the equipment to prove it." She threw her arms around Eleanor. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Eleanor hugged her back, and Adrian caught the expression on her face, surprise and joy, and something that looked a lot like love. "You're welcome, Maya. I thought you might enjoy it." "Enjoy it? I'm going to use it every single day. I'm going to study everything. Water samples from the lake, leaves from the park, maybe even my own hair cells." "Maybe save the hair cells for after dinner," Adrian suggested. They settled into the evening with an ease that spoke of months of practice. Adrian had made lasagna, one of the few dishes he could consistently pull off, and Eleanor had brought a salad and homemade breadsticks that she'd apparently learned to make specifically for tonight, following a YouTube tutorial at 2 in the morning when she couldn't sleep. "You made these yourself?" Adrian asked, impressed. "From scratch?" "Don't sound so shocked. I'm capable of domestic activities." "No, it's just, you run a multi-million-dollar company. I figured you had people who made breadsticks for you." "I do have people who could make breadsticks, but I wanted to make them myself. For you. For this." She gestured at the small dining table, at Maya setting out napkins with careful precision, at the simple domestic scene that probably looked nothing like Eleanor's usual Christmas celebrations. "This matters to me. You both matter to me. So I learned to make breadsticks." Adrian kissed her, right there in his tiny kitchen, with Maya humming Christmas carols in the next room. They're perfect. Dinner was chaotic and wonderful. Maya told elaborate stories about school, about her ongoing campaign to convince the principal that marine biology should be added to the 3rd grade curriculum, about the injustice of having to learn long division when calculators existed. Eleanor listened with genuine attention, asking questions, offering encouragement, occasionally catching Adrian's eye across the table with expressions that said, "Is she always like this? And I adore this child in equal measure." After dinner, they watched a Christmas movie that Maya had seen approximately 40 times, but still quoted along with enthusiastically. Eleanor sat on the couch with Maya curled against her side, the easy physical affection between them something that had developed naturally over the past months. Adrian watched them from his chair, his chest tight with gratitude and disbelief that this was his life now. When Maya finally fell asleep halfway through the movie, Eleanor carefully extracted herself and helped Adrian carry her to bed. They stood in the doorway of Maya's room, watching her sleep, and Eleanor whispered, "She's extraordinary. You've done such an incredible job with her." We both know she raised herself half the time, I just tried not to screw up too badly. You're selling yourself short. She's kind and curious and confident because you made her feel safe and loved and valued. That's all you, Adrian. They retreated to the living room, where the Christmas tree lights cast a warm glow over everything. Eleanor had brought a gift for Adrian, too, a leather-bound journal with his initials embossed on the cover. For your thoughts, she explained. Maya mentioned you used to write. Before Sarah got sick, I thought maybe you'd want to start again. Adrian opened the journal, running his fingers over the blank pages. I haven't written anything in years. Maybe it's time. Maybe there are things you need to process, to remember, to preserve. Sarah's story deserves to be written down. Your journey as a single father deserves documentation. And who knows, maybe someday Maya will want to read it, to understand what these years were like from your perspective. The gift was so thoughtful, so perfectly calibrated to who Adrian was beneath the surface, that he found himself blinking back tears. Thank you. This is... Eleanor, this is perfect. Open yours, she prompted, gesturing to the small box he'd wrapped for her. Inside was a set of professional-grade watercolor brushes, the kind serious artists used, expensive and beautiful. Eleanor lifted one out carefully, testing its weight, its balance. Adrian, these are too much. You're starting to paint again. You need proper tools. Besides, you spent hundreds of dollars on Maya's microscope. Fair is fair. That's different. Maya's a child. She needs encouragement, and you're an adult who's been denying herself joy for 2 decades. You need encouragement, too. He took her hand. Let yourself have this, Eleanor. Let yourself be more than just a CEO. You're an artist, too. Or you could be, if you gave yourself permission. Eleanor set the brushes down carefully and kissed him, slow and deep and full of emotion she still sometimes struggled to articulate. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. I got offered a major partnership opportunity today, she said quietly. A Silicon Valley firm wants to merge with Meridian. It would triple our valuation, expand our market reach exponentially, cement my legacy in the tech industry. Adrian's stomach dropped. That's incredible. Congratulations. I turned it down. What? Why would you? Because it would mean relocating to California. Because it would mean 80-hour weeks minimum for the next 2 years. Because it would mean sacrificing every bit of the life I'm building here. She pulled back to meet his eyes. Because I've spent my entire adult life chasing the next big thing, the next milestone, the next achievement. And I'm tired, Adrian. I don't want to be the CEO who conquered Silicon Valley. I want to be the woman who makes breadsticks from scratch and goes to zoo lights and helps an 8-year-old girl with her science projects. Eleanor, you can't give up your career for... I'm not giving it up. I'm choosing balance. I'm choosing a life that includes my career but isn't consumed by it. She took his hand. The board wasn't thrilled with my decision. A few of the investors were furious. But you know what I realized? None of them will be at my bedside when I'm old. None of them will remember my birthday, or care about my hobbies, or love me for who I am instead of what I've built. And I'd rather have this, you and Maya and Tuesday, coffee dates, and Christmas Eve lasagna than another billion-dollar deal. Adrian felt his eyes sting. You're sure? Absolutely sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Eleanor smiled, genuine and free. I've spent 20 years being successful. I'd like to spend the next 20 being happy. And you make me happy, both of you. This life we're building makes me happy. I love you, Adrian said, the words spilling out before he could second-guess them. I love you, Eleanor Blake. I love your ambition and your vulnerability and the way you ask Maya genuine questions about marine biology, even though you couldn't care less about squid mating habits. I love how you learned to make breadsticks at 2 a.m. and how you stood up to a board of directors to choose what actually matters. I love you. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. I love you too. Both of you. My brilliant, beautiful, unexpected family. They kissed again, sealing promises that had been building for months, acknowledging the future they were choosing together. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying and laughing at the same time. So what happens now? Adrian asked. With Meridian? With us? With everything? Now I run my company on my own terms, delegate more, trust my team, stop trying to control every detail. I work reasonable hours, take actual weekends off, maybe even go on a vacation occasionally. She grinned. And I spend Tuesday afternoons at coffee shops, Saturday mornings at museums, and Christmas Eves eating lasagna with the two people who somehow became my entire world in less than 6 months. That sounds perfect. It sounds terrifying. I have no idea how to actually implement work-life balance. I've been reading books about it, but the advice seems suspiciously simple. We'll figure it out together, just like everything else. They spent the rest of the evening talking about the future, carefully, tentatively, but with growing confidence. Eleanor mentioned that her lease was up in 3 months, and maybe, possibly, if it wasn't too fast, she might consider looking for a place near Adrian and Maya. Adrian suggested that maybe, eventually, when everyone was ready, they could look for a place together. Big enough for 3 people and a potential cat, despite what the current lease said. When Eleanor finally left around midnight, Adrian walked her to her car through the fresh snow. The city was quiet, peaceful, the kind of silent that only comes with new snowfall. "Thank you for tonight," Eleanor said, "for including me, for trusting me with your traditions, for letting me be part of this. Thank you for choosing us, for turning down Silicon Valley, for making breadsticks." Adrian pulled her close, "for being brave enough to want something besides success. Turns out, I want everything I never knew I was missing. A partner who sees me, a child who challenges me, a life that's messy and imperfect and absolutely nothing like I planned." She kissed him once more. "Merry Christmas, Adrian Hale." "Merry Christmas, Eleanor Blake." He watched her drive away, then returned to the apartment where Maya had somehow migrated to the couch, still asleep but now wrapped in her favorite blanket. Adrian carried her back to bed for the second time that night, tucking her in carefully. "Is Eleanor gone?" Maya mumbled, half asleep. "Yeah, sweetheart. She'll be back tomorrow for presents, though." "Good. I like when she's here. Feels more like a real family." Maya's eyes opened slightly. "Daddy, are you going to marry her?" Adrian's heart stuttered. We haven't really talked about that yet. Would you want me to?" "Only if you love her, and only if she promises to stay. I can't." Maya's voice got very small. "I can't lose another mom, Daddy. I just can't." Adrian gathered her close, his own fears and Maya's tangling together in the darkness. "Hey, look at me. Eleanor is not going anywhere. She loves us, both of us. And yes, sometimes people leave even when they don't want to, like Mommy did. But Eleanor is choosing to be here. Every single day, she's choosing us. That's what love is, choosing to stay even when it's hard." "You promise?" "I promise that Eleanor loves us and wants to be part of our family. And I promise that if anything ever changes, we'll face it together, you and me. Just like we always have. Okay?" Maya nodded against his chest. "Okay, but I still think you should marry her. She'd look really pretty in a wedding dress. And also it would make her officially family, and then she'd have to come to all our birthdays forever." Adrian laughed despite the tears in his eyes. "I'll keep that in mind. Now sleep, baby girl. Santa can't come if you're awake." "Daddy, I'm 8. I know about Santa." "Do you now?" "Yeah, you're Santa. You're always Santa. And that's better than the fake Santa anyway, because you actually know what I want." After Maya fell back asleep, Adrian returned to the living room and picked up the journal Eleanor had given him. He sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, staring at the first blank page. Then he began to write. "My name is Adrian Hale, and this is the story of how I learned to live again." He wrote about Sarah, about the love they'd shared and the life they'd built, about her death and the grief that followed, the impossible task of raising a daughter alone while drowning in loss, about the slow, painful process of learning to be both mother and father to a child who needed him to be whole. And then he wrote about a late-night security breach, a CEO working at midnight, a moment of connection that changed everything. About Tuesday coffee dates and museum visits and breadsticks made at 2 a.m. by a woman who was learning that success could look different than she'd always imagined. He wrote for hours, the words pouring out like water from a broken dam, 4 years of held emotions finally finding their way onto paper. When he finally set down the pen, the sky was beginning to lighten with Christmas dawn. Adrian checked on Maya one more time. Still sleeping, her new microscope already set up on her desk where she'd placed it before bed. Then he collapsed into his own bed, exhausted but more at peace than he'd been in years. Christmas morning arrived with Maya jumping on his bed at 7 a.m. sharp, her enthusiasm undimmed by late-night conversations. "It's Christmas! It's Christmas! Get up, Daddy, we have to open presents, and then Eleanor is coming over for brunch, and then we're going to Mrs. Chen's for cookies, and then—" "Maya, breathe. We have all day. But I want to do everything now." They opened presents, Maya's delighted shrieks over the microscope Eleanor had given her, her equally enthusiastic response to the art supplies Adrian had bought, her genuine appreciation for the handmade scarf Mrs. Chen had knitted. Adrian opened the gifts Maya had made him, a painted coffee mug that was only slightly lopsided, and a construction paper card that declared him world's best dad, scientifically verified. Eleanor arrived at 10 with homemade cinnamon rolls that she'd apparently been up since 6 making, following another YouTube tutorial with fierce determination. They were slightly burnt on the bottom, but tasted perfect anyway. Mrs. Chen joined them for brunch, taking one look at Eleanor and Adrian and Maya together and smiling with deep satisfaction. "Well," she announced, "it's about time." "About time for what?" Maya asked. "About time your father remembered that he's allowed to be happy. About time this lovely woman realized that success isn't measured only in dollars and achievements. About time you got more adults in your life who see how remarkable you are." Mrs. Chen raised her orange juice in a toast to new beginnings and chosen family and the courage to build something beautiful from broken pieces. They clinked glasses, orange juice for Maya and Mrs. Chen, coffee for Adrian and Eleanor, and ate cinnamon rolls and talked about the year ahead. Maya announced her intention to start a marine biology club at school. Eleanor mentioned she was thinking about teaching a business course at Northwestern, passing on her knowledge without the 80-hour work weeks. Adrian admitted he was considering writing a book about single parenting, maybe something that could help other fathers navigating loss and resilience. "You should," Eleanor encouraged. "You have wisdom worth sharing, experience that could genuinely help people." "It's just an idea. Probably won't go anywhere." "Start it anyway. See what happens. The worst outcome is you have a collection of memories preserved. The best outcome is you help someone who desperately needs to know they're not alone." After brunch, they bundled up for a walk through the snow-covered neighborhood. Maya ran ahead, making snow angels and collecting pine cones, while Adrian and Eleanor walked hand in hand behind her. "I meant what I said last night," Eleanor said quietly, "about looking for a place together. If that's something you'd want, eventually." "I'd want that. Eventually." Adrian squeezed her hand. Though, fair warning, living with an 8-year-old marine biology enthusiast is chaos. "I run a tech company. I can handle chaos." "This is different chaos. This is why are there fish facts taped to every surface and no, you cannot turn the bathtub into an aquarium chaos." Eleanor laughed. "Sounds perfect. When should we start looking?" "Maybe after the new year? Give us time to prepare Maya, make sure she's comfortable with the transition, find a place that has room for her art projects and your painting and my terrible cooking experiments. And the cat we're definitely getting despite every lease ever written. Obviously the cat. Maya will never forgive us if we don't get the cat." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, watching Maya discover the magic of fresh snow. The neighborhood was peaceful, other families out enjoying Christmas morning, the world temporarily softened by winter's blanket. "Adrian?" Eleanor said eventually. "Yeah?" "I'm scared. Of all of this. Of how much I love you both. Of how devastated I'd be if something went wrong. Of being responsible for Maya's happiness and security. Of not being enough for either of you." Adrian stopped walking, turned to face her. "You know what I've learned? Fear doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're doing something that matters. Something real. And yes, loving people means risking loss. But the alternative is living in a protective bubble and calling that safety when really it's just loneliness with better marketing. When did you get so wise?" 4 years of single parenting and therapy. Lots of therapy." He pulled her close. "We're both scared, Eleanor. Both of us are risking everything on this working out. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe alone. And I hope, you feel the same way." "I do. I really do." Eleanor rested her head on his shoulder. "I just needed to say it out loud, to acknowledge that this terrifies me and I'm doing it anyway because you're worth it. Both of you are worth it. So are you. Worth the risk, worth the effort, worth believing in." Maya ran back to them, her face flushed with cold and excitement. "Guys, Come make a snowman with me. I want to make one that looks like a scientist, with stick arms holding test tubes. How exactly are we making test tubes out of snow? Adrian asked. We'll figure it out. We're creative people. Maya grabbed both their hands. Come on, as a family. And so they built a snowman together, slightly lopsided, with pine cones for buttons and sticks that looked nothing like test tubes, but which Maya insisted were perfect. Neighbors passing by smiled at the scene, and one elderly couple stopped to comment on what a beautiful family they made. None of them corrected the assumption. Because that's what they were becoming, Adrian realized as he watched Eleanor help Maya adjust the snowman's carrot nose while debating the scientific accuracy of its proportions. A family. Not in the traditional sense, not the way Adrian's life had been planned, but real and chosen and built from the ashes of loss. That evening, after Eleanor had gone home and Maya was asleep with Professor Tentacles and her microscope guidebook, Adrian returned to his journal. He wrote about Christmas Day, about the feeling of Eleanor's hand in his, about Maya's acceptance and enthusiasm, about the terrifying joy of building something new. And then he wrote a letter to Sarah, putting into words what he'd been feeling for months. I met someone. Her name is Eleanor, and she's brilliant and driven and learning to be soft. She makes me laugh. She adores our daughter. She chose us over Silicon Valley. I love her, Sarah, differently than I loved you, but just as deeply. And I hope you'd approve. I hope you'd see that I'm still the man you fell in love with, still honoring what we built together, just finding a way to keep living beyond the grief. Maya is thriving. We're both thriving. And while I will always, always miss you, I'm learning that life doesn't end when love does. It just changes shape, becomes something else, something still worth living. He closed the journal and sat in the quiet of his apartment, feeling Sarah's presence not as a ghost, but as a blessing. The love they'd shared hadn't disappeared. It had transformed, become the foundation that allowed him to trust Eleanor, to believe in second chances, to know that his heart was big enough for both grief and joy. Outside, snow continued to fall over Chicago, covering the city in silent white. Adrian watched it through the window, thinking about the journey that had brought him here, from that late-night security breach to this moment of quiet contentment, about how sometimes the most important connections happen when you least expect them, how crisis can become catalyst, how showing up at midnight can change the trajectory of multiple lives. His phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. Thank you for today, for every day, for believing in me when I was still learning to believe in myself. I love you, both of you, more than I knew I was capable of. Adrian typed back, we love you too. Come over for breakfast tomorrow. Maya wants to show you the cells in pond water she collected this afternoon. Pond water at breakfast. Living the dream. Our dream. Yes, our dream. Exactly our dream. Adrian set down the phone and smiled into the darkness. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more growth, more moments of uncertainty. Eleanor would struggle with work-life balance. Maya would have difficult days missing her mother. Adrian would wrestle with guilt and fear and the constant question of whether he was doing right by everyone he loved. But they would face it together, as a family, imperfect and brave and choosing each other every single day. And that, Adrian thought as he finally headed to bed, was more than enough. It was everything. The story of a single father and a CEO and the daughter who brought them together was still being written, still unfolding, still discovering new chapters. But the foundation was solid now, built on honesty and vulnerability and the radical act of letting people in despite the risk. Adrian Hale had spent 4 years protecting himself and his daughter from further loss. Now he was learning a different kind of courage, the courage to build something new, to trust in tomorrow, to believe that happiness was allowed to coexist with grief. In the darkness of his bedroom, Adrian whispered one final thought into the quiet. We're going to be okay, all of us. We're going to be more than okay. We're going to be happy. And somewhere in the space between memory and hope, he felt Sarah's approval like a gentle hand on his shoulder. The man who'd spent a night protecting a CEO's future had found his own future in the process. A future that included Tuesday coffee dates and Saturday museum trips and Christmas mornings with cinnamon rolls and snow angels. A future with a brilliant 8-year-old and a woman who made breadsticks at 2 a.m. and chose love over ambition. A future worth every risk, every fear, every moment of vulnerability. a future that was just beginning.